Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Comics Rot Your Brain, the show where screenwriters talk about the comic books that we love, mostly from the 1980s. I'm one of your hosts, I'm Steven Bagatourian.
And I'm your other host, Chris Derrick.
And Chris, you know, like the tagline for our show says, we're here to talk about comics mostly from the 80s. Well, today is the day that we earn the mostly, because this is our first time talking about a comic from the 1990s, 1993 to be exact. And it's an extra special day because it's also the first time we're doing something else here on CRYB. We're talking about a superhero comic. Imagine that.
I know, it's crazy that we've spent 12 episodes and they've not talked about anyone in the costume. Well, I guess maybe Nexus is, and maybe Hawkman.
Yeah, Grendel's got a costume.
Yeah, to a degree. But in terms of like, you know, this like a big Marvel book or a big DC book, this is our first time talking about those characters. Which I'm
that's
excited
true.
to talk about. I'm excited to talk about. We're talking about this week. We're talking about the Golden Age.
Whew, and this is a terrific superhero book for us to kind of dive into these waters with. It's a very unique book. And yeah, for anybody who wants to be like super pedantic, yes, we did do an episode on Hawkworld. Yes, we know Hawkman's a superhero, but Hawkworld doesn't really play like a typical superhero book. It's set on Thanagar, political intrigue, blah, blah, blah. This is the first thing we've covered that actually feels like a superhero comic, albeit one that is set in the faraway world of the 1950s in America. And this is such a unique post-war look at superheroes from the slam bang creative team of the legendary artist Paul Smith and the extremely well-respected writer James Robinson. They're quite a team, and this book is it's pretty amazing. It's a 4-issue miniseries that was published under the DC Comics imprimatur that was known as Elseworlds. And for those of you who don't know, Elseworlds was a line of comics that DC Comics launched with the inaugural book, Batman Gotham by Gaslight, where they reimagined DC Comics characters in other times and other eras. And in these different milieux, we got to sort of see how the DC heroes would have played out in different contexts and in different time frames. So, i.e., it was like Batman Gotham by Gaslight was what if Bruce Wayne had existed during the time of Jack the Ripper in Victorian London. And so this was the idea with Elseworlds. And, you know, Golden Age was under that banner, and it took a deep and sinister look at what might have happened to DC's first generation of superheroes in the wake of World War II. The story was set at the start of one of the darkest periods in U.S. history, the infamous McCarthy hearings and the era that we now think of as McCarthyism that was brought about by the U.S. Senator Joseph McCarthy, where he led a campaign of political repression and persecution of left-wing individuals. And it was just a situation where he was spreading fear of the alleged communist and Soviet influence over American institutions, and was accusing all kinds of people of being spies and commies and that kind of thing. And it was one of the most wild witch hunts in the history of America. And this was the world that James Robinson and Paul Smith decided to examine superheroes through the lens of. Very original, very cool idea. So, Chris, do we want to talk about what happens in the story a little bit more?
It's set in a world that has no need for superheroes anymore. So the Justice Society and the All-Star Squadron, they break up, and their various members face tragic personal crises. The paranoia from McCarthyism has taken a chokehold on America, and these superheroes are driven into retirement or into hiding, or they're afflicted by madness, except for a few who are willing to change with the times. And in true McCarthy-era fashion, a sinister plot slowly unfolds, one that may engulf the planet and have it be remade in one man's image. So that is this crazy book. It features famous DC characters such as the original Green Lantern, the original Hawkman, and Johnny Quick, as well as a cast of important but lesser known World War II era heroes. And now, as
Yeah.
we said, and as we said, the book was drawn by Paul Smith, who is known for his incredible work on X-Men. He did a run, just like 10 or 11 issues in like, I think it was like in 83, 84, and it had this huge impact on the rest of that book, like going forward for the next 40 years. He also did some film work on Nexus. He's following the footsteps of Steve Rude, which is not something easy to do, like on any level. And
Yes.
what's curious about Paul Smith is he never received any formal art school education, and he was heavily influenced by Neal Adams, and he came from the animation world. Something he worked on was a big project. He worked on the cartoon version of Lord of the Rings that was directed by Ralph Bakshi in like 1978, maybe 79.
Wow.
And yeah, which is crazy, But I think that's why his art style is so clean and it tells the story so sharply without over too much cross hatching and all that kind of crazy stuff that became big around this time, because this is when Image was blowing up and Valiant was blowing up and
Yep.
McFarlane and I was showing the world that art is cool if it's got like thousands of lines on someone's arm. So
Yes. Yes. And that was not exactly our friend Paul Smith's approach. You're totally right, man. Like Paul Smith's work has so much elegance and grace to it that you can kind of see why he would have been also selected to be a fill-in artist for Steve Rude on Nexus, because that's one of the unique qualities about Steve Rude's work that we remarked upon so much in that episode that is honestly so rare for an American comic book artist, and particularly at that time, maybe to have that sense of grace and this like the spare elegance of line work. It's not an easy thing to do, and yeah, that Paul Smith X-Men run is just unbelievable, just amazing. We're both huge fans of that. So all right, now in terms of James Robinson, he is no slouch himself. He's had a very distinguished career as a comic book writer. He's also been a screenwriter of some note, but he's written hundreds and hundreds of comics. At the time he wrote Golden Age, he was not really very much of a known commodity in the US market. He is a Brit who made his debut in the world of comics with an original graphic novel called London's Dark that was illustrated by Paul Johnson. And it was actually a very well regarded graphic novel at the time. I remember I have that book somewhere. I don't recall much about it, but it's a very lovely looking book. Robinson had gone on to write a Grendel short story as well, but really he had not made that much of an impact in the US prior to Golden Age. And coming off of Golden Age, he would go on to write what I think is probably still considered his signature work in comic books, which was a very lengthy run on the character of Starman. And it was sort of a modern reimagining, reinventioning of the character of Starman in contemporary times, which he collaborated on with the artist Tony Harris, and that's a very beloved run. But yeah, like I say, Robinson's had a hell of a career. He's written approximately a gazillion comics all across the board for lots of companies. But I will say that I think Golden Age is still really one of his defining things he's ever done that will be well remembered forever. And I think it's just a great piece of work, and it's just a terrific story that we had a lot to say about, as you'll see.
yeah, and the thing about Golden Age is, we talked about it just briefly. This book is an Elseworlds book, but it's probably the only Elseworlds book where certain elements of it actually made their way into to DC canon. And we're not going to spoil what that is because we want you to listen to the episode, find out what happens, or if you haven't read it, you should read it. And the last thing, as we said, is this book came out in 1993, which was the first year of Bill Clinton's presidency. It was the second or third year after the launch of Valiant and Image. So Marvel and DC were scrambling to try to figure out how they could compete in the marketplace with these upstarts. And they found a way to do that. And Golden Age is a book that did something pretty special. It gave life and a modern take on the DC heroes that came out of the 30s and 40s. I think that most people probably forgot about. And there's more of that when we get into the show. And now let's get on with the show. A lot of people don't talk about this book in the same breath as Watchmen, but I think it's as good or better than Watchmen.
Yeah, no, you said that to me kind of in anticipation for this episode, and that kind of blew my mind when you said that. But like, it did make me even more curious to revisit the story because I honestly didn't remember the Golden Age that well. I had bought it when it came out, and I think I had bought it largely for the Paul Smith art. But I think that the story, probably for me at the time when it first came out, might have been just a little, I don't know, a little political or like a little dry for me at the time. And so I think I didn't fully appreciate this when it came out. So I'm really glad that you wanted to look at this again because I actually enjoyed the hell out of this reading it now. And along with Watchmen, I think the book that it really calls to mind for me also is Darwin Cook's New Frontier. And I
Which I
think
haven't
it's just,
read.
oh, you haven't read New Frontier? Oh shit. We
Mhm.
gotta talk about that on the show sometime. Yeah, because New Frontier is like very much kind of in a retro vein, dealing with a lot of these, like not all the exact same heroes, but it's got a lot of similar sort of vibes to it in a certain way. But I think
It's
Golden Age predates New Frontier though.
Yeah, a New Frontier, I think, is a Silver Age character, because I remember
Yeah.
seeing it, and it has, like, Wonder Woman in it and stuff like that, and I think and it's got the Barry Allen Flash, I believe, I don't quite remember, but, I mean, look, like, I was thinking about this is why I like this book more than Watchmen, is that in terms of what and this is why I brought up about why people think it should be canon, is that it is the characters are characters we know.
Hmm.
To a degree. Whereas you look at Watchmen and it's like those characters don't have any kind of there's no legacy to them. There's all new. Now,
Right.
granted, they're kind of like those repurposed versions of those like of
The
those
Charlton
the
characters.
Charlton heroes, but they're not those Charlton heroes. And this is all those people that we know of that like before I mean the Alan Scott Green Lantern, the Jay Garrick Flash, the
Yeah,
Carter
yeah.
Hall, like we know them and we don't I mean and even as a kid even though when you're reading this we don't know these were Silver Age books so we don't see their adventures, but I remember as a kid like seeing little like books and stuff about comics and these people were in them
Oh,
you know
totally. Oh, yeah, like All-Star Squadron.
yeah, All Star Squadron and other stuff. And I feel, but not stuff that I read, but I just remember seeing them on covers and seeing like little like, and maybe even like encyclopedia articles about comics stuff like that. So these characters have like, there's a cultural weight to these
Yes.
characters that you don't have in Watchmen. And also because the villain in this is a villain that's part of canon, whereas the villain in Watchmen is just like that monster, that alien creature coming. It's got no kind of relevance to
or,
anything.
or it's Ozymandias, or
Well,
depending how you look at it.
Okay, him too, but again, but he's got no weight to it.
Sure.
And the fact that, but for those who haven't read, we'll get into this. So the Golden Age takes place just after World War II. And the first issue is interesting. The whole thing is narrated by Johnny Quick.
Yep.
And Johnny Quick is kind of one of these speedster characters from the 30s, the 40s. And he has like he's got like a formula, he says, to give him his speed or something like that, right?
Yeah, I think that's right, and that's not to be confused with Our Man, who takes like a
The
Miraclo
pill.
pill. Yeah, and like all these characters, for the most part, were familiar to me and would be familiar to anybody out there who did read Roy Thomas's All Star Squadron, because so many of these characters, Johnny Quick, Liberty Bell, the Tarantula, just virtually all of them were, the major players. Starman, they were the major players in All Star Squadron, which actually was one of the first comics I read as a kid. So come to think of it, I don't know why Golden Age didn't appeal to me more when I was younger, because I was all about All Star Squadron. So, anyways, I don't know
But
why
no,
that.
but here's the thing though, because it's a book that's about look. It comes in after World War II, and Johnny Quick's making a documentary about mystery men, and it's
Yes.
basically like trying to explain what happened to the mystery men during World War II. Because what and they kind of make this thing. They make this leap of fate, a leap of a twist in the narrative of saying there's a reason why these mystery men didn't go and stop
Oh,
Hitler.
yes,
And
yes.
that's part of like the documentary that he's making, and he reveals that there was this guy named like
Otto.
Parzival or
Parsifal. Yeah.
Parzival, who was a Nazi who had the ability. He's kind of like is there a Marvel character who's like this who will sap your to take away your power? Like he takes
Rogue.
yeah, kind of like Rogue, but if he gets in part if he gets in proximity of you, then he takes away your powers. You
Yes.
know, and that's why and he was a Nazi, and that's why you know and Roosevelt and Truman kept it quiet and kind of made it because they were like, well, if we sent one of these heroes over there and they got killed, it
Yep.
would totally fuck up our morale. And
Exactly.
it's interesting the way that he's playing this because this is James Robinson. He's playing this in a way. This is why I think that maybe it didn't appeal to you as a child because it's asking you to kind of like understand why the heroes couldn't be heroes. And they,
Yeah, that's a good point, man. It's a very nuanced and like interesting angle that Robinson takes here.
yeah, and I look at it and I'm like reading it now. I'm like, this is cool because when those comics. I mean, look, like we know from Cavalier and Clay, the Chabon book, and we know from just other stuff about like the history of comics. Those it was so many Jewish creators who creating these heroes in response to what was going on in Germany. And it was like, oh, we're trying to be like some morale booster. But Robinson is trying to say, and you know, like, Captain America's fighting the Germans and stuff like that, and everything like that. In those, or Captain, but he's trying to say, why didn't all these characters, Green Lanterns around, and you know, what they call him, the big guy, like you like what, like why couldn't they stop the war? And he's trying to
Mhm.
envision like what if these characters actually existed, and what would that be about? I think it's such a smart way in to tell this story. And these heroes, so you pick it up in the late 40s, and the heroes are kind of like, because we couldn't fight the war, what's our real value? And that's where he kind of like and that's what Johnny Quick is asking in his documentary when he's trying to finish. And it's funny because he talks about like, I got to do all this work. I did all this work on it. And he was like, look, if I was Johnny Quick, I could solve this. Like,
I love
oh
that.
yeah, like
I love that moment, right? Like
yeah,
like he's got the little fantasy of himself like getting the movie done really
yeah,
in like
real
a
fast.
second. Yeah.
And it's like he won't even do that. And then it's just kind of like a flash to all these other characters, like you said. There's like Liberty Bell and the Tarantula, and Johnny Quick was married to Liberty Bell, but they got divorced. And it's just and he lives. They now live like in Arizona or some shit like that.
I think New
New
Mexico. Yeah.
Mexico, and it's just like this great thing about like what happened to the people, and then what's his name, like Starman, like Ted Knight was like It's cool how they go. He was involved in like the Los Alamos project, and Einstein helped him kind of like create the star rod, you know,
Yeah.
and you like, and again, it's the way he kind of intermixes like what's real and what's comic book stuff to make it feel like, well, if they were really existing, what would it be like? And he's like suffering the guilt from like creating the atomic bomb. Like it's so fascinating the way he kind of like spins all the characters out to like they couldn't deal with the real world stakes.
Right.
And if you think about what they were doing, you know, the heroes of those times, the comics of those times, and their villains were doing not the kind of shit they would start doing in like the Silver Age when they're like threatening the planet or threatening the galaxy. They're just like they're regular like they're Batman type villains in do a degree. Like we're just gonna be doing robberies for ourselves. And like and you look at it like all the heroes, like all their powers are kind of geared down to fit the stakes of what can happen. You know, like if you think
Hmm.
about it, because Superman's not in this, neither is Batman. But you have no Aquaman, you've got no like not no red tornado. You know, there's no green. I mean, like there's a level of like what could really threaten them. Well, like it's just the Silver Age type of characters,
Yeah.
and they all. So it's interesting the way they're even just constructed, and but they all realize they don't have value anymore, which I think is a fascinating take on what would it be like to be a mystery man. And that's what it's like a really cool story. And then there's one guy who survived, who came back from the
Yeah.
war.
Yeah.
This guy named Tex Thompson, who was kind of like a fucking nobody. and he's come back, and he has this little like cover story about he went and was like fighting as an undercover SS guy and doing stuff and killing people, and he's back and he's the now big star, and the government is making him and they're giving him that ticker tape parade, and like, oh my god, here's the new direction of heroes coming out of the war. And he's saying mystery men need to unmask themselves, and which is interesting because I feel like Brad Bird kind of borrowed some of this for is it the Invincibles?
The Incredibles.
The Incredibles? Like it's a similar kind of thing. Like, hey, you can't be a hero anymore. And I love it that you're like, what do you do when you've defined yourself by this external personality and you can't really do it anymore? And they all kind of like, like Tarantula is alcoholic and Liberty Bell is like this like submissive wife who doesn't like it. And I forget the guy who plays, what's the guy's name who plays Our Man, but Our Man he's got a tolerance to his pill. And
Yeah.
I'm like, God, this is so dope. Like all of it is so dopely constructed as a story.
Yeah.
And the
And
coolest
also,
story that I
oh, you're going to say,
remember.
yes. Oh, no, sorry. I just want to make sure you touch on Green Lantern, also Alan Scott.
Oh yeah, yeah, So Alan Scott, he's given up the ring. He keeps it in a safe. Oh no, he's wearing it at first, but he never uses it. And
Hmm.
he runs like a big like radio conglomerate. Like he
Yeah.
feels like he might be like, what's the guy's name? Is it Henry Luce, the guy who created Time and Life magazine? Like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. He's like he's a mogul like
Yeah,
that.
he's the mogul, and it's like this. He's like, this is more powerful than the ring. Like my ability to reach people.
And
To
he employs tons of people. He employs like a ton of writers.
Yeah, for
And
radio.
yeah, for radio, and they're facing pressure. What's this from the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and you got all this kind of like McCarthyite communism sort of witch hunt stuff ramping up. And Alan Scott is, it says here in the story, he's feeling his shoulders ache as if the weight of the world was on them. And and this is not from being a superhero; it's from now being like a regular person who just has all this pressure on him. And and he talks with Johnny Quick in a really melancholy way about just why he's not a superhero anymore. And he says, "Do you realize the power I have? I could level cities. Um, the atom bomb, you saw what it did. The lives lost, the ash and bodies, a fraction of my power, a fraction." And he's talking about the power he had as Green
Yeah,
Lantern.
the ring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Who decided the bomb should be dropped? Men. What right did they have to unleash such devastation on the world? We won the war, yes, but who's to say we were morally right? I have power far greater than the bomb. What moral right do I have to it? What if I erred one day and a city died? I wield power beyond imagination. I'm married to that power by a ring of green. I want a divorce. And
It's
that's
fantastic
amazing.
because
Yeah.
because again, it's the level of like the impotence of the war and that they couldn't do anything. And you're like, oh yeah, if he had the ring, he could have stopped Imperial Japan. He could have done all this shit, and it didn't happen. And it's this level of like, it's interesting too because when this book's coming out in like, was it 93 or something like that, 92, 93, it's when America is kind of in a weird place when it doesn't feel as strong as it used to be. So we're out of the 80s, and we're starting the age of exporting all of our jobs.
Hmm.
And this level of like, okay, what can we do? Like what's, like the Cold War is over, and it's like, what's our value again? Like, what's our
Yeah.
value as a society? That's why this book is so interesting because although it's telling a story in the past, the last great moment of geopolitical upheaval is this crisis point in 46. And it's really, I mean, the story that I remember the most, love the most, is the Paul Kirk story. Because
Oh,
Paul Kirk,
Manhunter.
who plays Manhunter, he comes back to the States with no memory of anything, and he's being hunted. And the way that Paul Smith, who's the artist on this, draws all of those little, there's a raw power of like the paranoia and the energy he's got to escape and doing stuff. The way he draws that is fucking phenomenal. I
Yeah.
remember this what I think episode 3, maybe issue 2 or 3. where there's like that he's in the car or that truck and it goes off the road and it's like it goes into the ice and it's like the
Yes.
angle he chose when you're down looking at that car. I was like, God damn, dude, like that's just a like the it's just a simple silhouette. But the way he framed it, I was like, fuck, dude. Like, how are you doing this? It's so that's the thing too, is like,
Yeah.
yeah, right there. Yeah. Fucking
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
fucking amazing. Because it's this
Yeah.
weird angle that's like the
Yeah.
car
It's really
feels like it's
odd.
yeah,
It's really odd.
but if the car feels like it's gonna spin, like not just move off, but like roll. But it's yeah, like Paul Smith is so dope in this series. I think it's the first big thing that I've seen him do post his X-Men run. Um, at the time because I didn't read his Nexus work until wait till after this. And I just and his style's a little different than his X-Men stuff, but he still has there's a cleanness to his line work and his compositions that is it's only surpassed by Steve Rude, I think. And I think Steve Rude like could have done this book too if he was maybe like mentally healthy. Or because we've talked about how he said mental problems. That's no secret. But I don't know. So that's kind of the first issue of this, and I mean it ends what has it end? It ends with the stuff, yeah, the Paul, the Manhunter thing is when he's being chased and you meet what's his name, Ted Knight, and he's in that um uh, uh insane
Yeah, he's
asylum,
in an asylum. Yeah.
yeah, and he's like having trouble. But in what's his name? The Adam guy goes to try to like show up and deal with Tex Thompson, and he's like, "No, we can't help you because your body's already been infected by some sort of radiation."
Yeah, the
And
old like the golden age Atom, and that's ATOM.
yeah,
He wants to be like this government engineered superhero that Tex Thompson is saying that he wants to create, and this is part of Tex Thompson's political campaign. And the Atom volunteers, but gets turned down after they run tests on him.
yeah, because like, oh, we can't use your body. I mean, but those scientists say that's in secret. And the last thing that happens is he goes and meets this guy named Daniel Dunbar,
Yes.
who is he was related. He was like the kid's sidekick of like
Yeah.
someone named TNT, and he was like what's his name was like
It was like Dynamite or
yeah,
TNT and Dynaman or
yeah
something
or,
like
or
that.
Dyna Boy or some shit like that or
Yeah.
Dyna Kid, and
Hmm.
Tex Thompson. So he's like, hey, you know what, kid? America needs you. Because he's getting kicked out of like Yale or some shit like that. And it's like, oh, he can't even like, oh, Princeton, he's kicked out of Princeton. And it's just like an interesting kind of uh um like closeout where we met all the players pretty much. They're all kind of like despondent and just don't want to be doing what they're
Like
doing,
super
you know?
melancholy. I mean, that is one thing that reminds me of
So
Watchmen.
melancholy.
It's very Watchmen-esque in the sense that it really is like, this kind of broken down, sad, poignant, like morning after when like all the superheroing has been done and it's the next decade and everyone's just like picking up the pieces of their fucked up life. And yeah, like it's an incredibly despondent sort of air that hangs over this whole book.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's I mean, like the narration in it is all done, like I said, by Johnny Quickman. He has this kind of tone of like you said, like despair, and it's almost like this level of like uh it's not regret, but it's like I wish we could have been good still.
Yeah.
Like it's like I don't know I don't know what the right word is, but it's a sense of like we didn't live up to our potential,
Yeah.
and that's why we're fuck ups now, and we're all suffering from it in a way that we can't really uh articulate as people because because it means we have to reveal like like who we were or as the mystery men.
Yeah.
um, so that leads us to episode or issue 2, 2 out of 4. The thing I love about this is the inside cover is like the nuclear bomb and shit. Oh my god,
Yeah.
I think that's fucking like dope. Um,
Yeah, oh wow, yeah, that's right. That's right. And that I guess that's another I mean, there are a lot of parallels between this book and Watchmen, but you've got, and it's also just partly the time that these books are dealing with, times where like the nuclear age and the nuclear sort of threat loomed so large, we're suddenly in a moment in the world where suddenly the idea of nuclear war once again is a thing. And that was something I was thinking just reading this book in the last week, because like it's been the first time in my lifetime that I can remember actually worrying about nuclear war as an adult. So it was a strange time to be reading this book, actually, come to think of it.
No, you're right, because I can't think of any time. The only time I remember there was like a fear of nuclear weapons in my lifetime was when that movie The Day After came on.
Mm.
Which kind of showed us what would happen if there was a nuclear holocaust, and it was, and like what it would be like, and it was like everyone was like, "What the fuck? This is what we're playing with." This is what
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people, at least for me as a kid, like they weren't. I mean, like we've seen the mushroom cloud, right? We've seen that's really stamped into our psyche, but we don't see a lot of footage or see the of Nagasaki and Hiroshima like that, like what that would look like, at like 10 days later, 100 days later, 3 years later. We don't know what that city, and right now those, I mean, but by the time that we're alive and aware of this stuff as kids, those cities have been rebuilt, but they always would say to you, right now our nuclear currency is 100 times what they dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, or whatever the fuck it is. These exponentially larger bomb things. You just kind of like, it's kind of unfathomable until that movie came out and we saw what it was like. But that's where this is kind of like picks up. You're right. It's an interesting period in our time, and
Yeah.
now this book, you're like, I don't know. Those Russians are just shooting at the fucking the nuclear. I was telling my brother the other day, it's like, like Putin can be like, it doesn't matter if we cause a nuclear meltdown in Ukraine, because we did it before in Chernobyl, just up the road, and we survived. So, it's like he might have this mindset of like, Russians can survive a nuclear event,
Mm.
and the rest of the world's like, yeah, but not us. We don't want that shit at all. Uh, so,
Oh.
but anyway, so back to issue 2 of the Golden Age. It begins with Tex Thompson is on his campaign trail. He's trying to be senator. He's brought together the team of Rex. No, Rex Towers is the other guy. It's Al. What's his name? Pratt. It's Al
Oh yeah,
Pratt
yeah,
is the
yeah.
Atom,
Pratt.
the
Yeah,
short guy.
Pratt's. Hmm.
Is Al Pratt's the Atom. There's a robot man who we got, and he's
Yep.
got like Daniel Dunphy. And these are the people that he says are going to be like the next brave Americans, and these are the ones who are
Yes.
going to like help with his plan to kind of like to make America great again. I think, does he say that somewhere? Like, I think he even
He
says
might
that
as
somewhere.
he might as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like he's pushing that level of like of weird fucking jingoism that
Hmm.
is like, and that he can do it because he's a war hero. And then the story begins to roll about how everyone is feeling uncomfortable about what's happening, and should we turn ourselves in, and what's this about? And then there's a little moment where Alan Scott hears about um a fight down in the lobby where one of
A
his old,
robbery.
yeah, it's a robbery. His old nemesis, the sports master. Is that his name? Sports master?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's
sports
ridiculous.
master.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, the
Yeah,
villain's name is Sportsmaster.
yeah. I mean, and the thing is, look, it goes back to what I was saying before about like the level of threat that the villains pose. But
Yeah.
the thing about it is, Sportsmaster carries a wooden bat. And
Yeah.
the thing about Alan Scott's Green Lantern, as opposed to the Green Lantern we know with like what's his name? Like the current one is, his weakness is wood, not yellow.
Oh,
So
is that true? Oh
yeah,
shit. I didn't even realize that. Oh my
yeah.
god.
So it's interesting that he
Wow.
carries that back because he's like, you know what? This will help me like fight the Green
Wow.
Lantern.
Okay, and here I was thinking that the Sportsmaster was a pretty pathetic villain because it's a dude in like a red jacket and a baseball bat with like a black cloth mask. I mean, I was just kind of thinking like, yo, this dude is no Doctor Doom.
No,
He is not.
he's not. No,
He's
he's
no
not.
Red
I mean,
Skull.
that's the thing. It's like, again, like it's just interesting. I mean, when you say to yourself, to have to, he's the Green Lantern. He's talking about this weight of the world on his shoulder, but you know what? But your weakness is wood. and there's so much wood available because later on in issue 4, like what's his name? Like he's attacked. He sit with a tree, and it
Mm,
takes him out of the fight. I was like, oh yeah, because the wood is fucking with him.
right, right.
But it's interesting, but the thing is that Scott, he doesn't even have the ring. He goes, I'm gonna fight this guy, and he knows who he is, and he gets shot. Doesn't get killed, but he gets shot, but he beats the sportsmaster, or the sportsmaster escapes actually with this money. But the
Yeah,
cool thing about it is, what I love is Sportsmaster's fucking um motivation. You
yeah,
get inside his head, and it's like, like he's married and his wife left him and took his daughter. And he's
yeah,
trying to be a thief just to get his daughter back. So he's kind
yeah,
of humanized him in a way that makes it like all the villains. It's just kind of like makes everybody feel more real as opposed to the arch fiends that we knew. Because if you read these older comics like this, and it's kind of the knock on like on a bunch of DC stuff, particularly in the Golden Age and the Silver Age, is the heroes. They're heroes, and their alter egos are like sketches. They're not really people, And by
sure.
giving this guy this backstory and this motivation, you kind of like get like it's like you get into his head in a way that you wouldn't when these comics are being published. I think it's cool.
Yeah, yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
really, really cool.
And also when Alan Scott gets shot, if you notice at the end of that page, it's a really interesting kind of conclusion to that sequence because not only does Alan Scott get shot, but so does a security guard who's there
Yeah.
trying to help stop Sportsmaster also. And Sportsmaster takes off and says, "You bastard, you cost me Stacy, damn you." And then he takes off. And so Sportsmaster, like you say, Chris, not upset that the stuff he was trying to steal has been taken away from him. He's upset that Alan Scott has cost him the opportunity to get his woman back and get his family back,
Yeah.
which is, it's very, very telling. But then Alan Scott looks at the security guard who's been shot, and Alan Scott says, arms on fire. "Hey, buddy, you all right? You okay?" The security guard's all fucked up and he's yelling and he says, "I failed. I screwed it." And then Alan Scott says, "Whoa, relax. We're only human." And
Yeah.
then it's a weird panel because Alan Scott is smiling. Like he's like got a soft smile on his face while he's holding his bullet wound. And meanwhile, the security guard has his head in his hands and is like weeping.
Well, yeah,
So
but
yeah,
you know what? Because it's funny, but it kind of goes to what happens like later on in this, is that with Captain Triumph, is that Scott is like, I did this without the ring. I have value as a human by just being a human. I don't need to exercise it with the power of the ring. And the security guard, who's never wielded the ring of power, he's
yes,
broken because I can. It's just a great kind of like,
yeah.
it's like his understanding of his own, like his own reality and mortality is what allows him to feel some sense of joy in getting shot.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. I think that's a very astute analysis of it. And it's like quite subtle writing here, but if you do kind of look at this and the layers of Alan Scott's personality, yeah, I think it's exactly what you say, Chris. Like he's feeling alive and just kind of, you know, more, I don't know, more human in this moment because of the fact that he's tasted a piece of just his own mortality, or he's realized like, shit, I almost died, and I'm not this omnipotent godlike being anymore, and it has more value to him, like what he's doing now.
For sure, for sure. The next story point is Tex Thompson. They dropped this nuclear bomb on, like Daniel Dunbar, or they exploded one near him.
Which is so crazy.
And
Yeah,
it's all because they're trying to figure out, because they're trying to imbue him with the powers and do the little like the switch they're doing, like the whole kind of like the true mastermind plan like of this book, you
yeah.
know. Um
The
yeah,
coloring, the coloring is wild too. Just on the page where they're doing the test, and like you see the doctors and everyone else wearing the sunglasses, and the color goes all white.
It's so because it's so bright. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like I'm, here's the thing. It's like I think I was telling you this before offline, but it's like like I was having a dispute with a friend of mine about how what's his name, Richard Ory colored this. Because if you look at it now,
Oh yeah,
you,
that's right. Yeah,
you
yeah. I'm glad you're saying this actually on the show.
yeah, like you look at it now in in 2020, and you might assume this book is computer colored. There's so much nuance and so much like gradation and detail and color transitions and all this kind of stuff. And my buddy, who's a computer graphic guy and designs cars for like Nissan and shit like that, was saying to me, "There's no way this book was not computer colored." And I was like, "I don't know. They knew how to computer color to this degree back in '92. I remember when computer color first came out, and it wasn't like, people like went overboard with it all the time. I didn't know how to like do
Yep.
this book is so subtle with how it's colored. And so I reached out to Richard Ory on Facebook and said, "Hey, dude, can you explain to me how you colored this book? Like, what was this?" And he was like, "It's like watercolor and gouache and like colored pencil and like Prismacolor shit." And I
Mm.
was like, "This," and I was like,
Wow.
"This is all hand done." All
Wow.
and it's kind of amazing because like just you look at it right there, like it's all white in that one
This
thing, but the
this is
panel below that
beautiful. This
where
is
it's
so
blown,
beautiful.
it's so good. It's shockingly good. It's one of the things
Yes.
about this book that makes it such an enjoyable read is like the coloring
Oh,
is
it's just
amazing.
it's just gorgeous, man. Like page after
It's
page.
amazing.
Oh man, if Richard Ory, if he didn't get nominated or win an Eisner for best colorist this year, like that would be a crime because
Yeah,
this is
a
a
complete one. A
stunning
complete
looking
one.
book, and it's a huge part of the artwork. And you talked about Paul Smith a little bit, but we've touched on Paul Smith only very lightly on this episode, considering how incredible this book looks. But it really is it's a collaboration with Richard Ory, because I think that Paul Smith's art is phenomenal, but the coloring really works hand in glove to really just elevate the art
You're right,
to
elevated
another level. Yeah, because you can
completely.
see like the subtlety of like the colored pencils and just all of these moments. Like the individual pages and the palettes are so carefully, beautifully chosen that this is, yeah, it's a rare treat in terms of the color here. But it just the art completely across the board here. It's a masterclass in comic art.
Oh
It's a
yeah. Oh fuck
beautiful,
yeah.
stunning book.
I mean, like you were showing me those panels when they're in that diner
Yeah.
with Manhunter later on, and it's like the way he does the night in this little
Hmm.
chase scene on the car. It's
Hmm.
like he uses so many different colors of blues and indigos and purples to to so that it feels night, but you see all the detail, and it's like god damn, dude, and it's that snowy, and it's just
Yeah.
like it's so like what the fuck, man? It's so. I mean, this scene where he's like, where the just shooting at him in the car, and it's like the gun fires at the driver, and it's like there's that pop of red and orange. It's just like, damn, dude, like it's so well conceived, and I can't. And you look at it now,
Yes.
you're like, he did all this by hand. He literally
Yeah,
did all this by hand.
it's stunning. It's really stunning, and I'm just looking at like page after page here. It's just you could frame any page, but like Paul Smith's art is so just beautiful and unique. But like, who are the influences? Where does Paul Smith come from? Like when I look at Paul Smith's work, at least on this book, it feels like it's kind of like the weird love child somewhere between Norman Rockwell and Alex Toth. Like it feels like
Yes.
you've got this Americana vibe deeply baked into it, but there's this simplicity of the line work and just an incredible just articulation of movement and storytelling that is very much reminds me of someone like Alex Toth. It's just it's an amazing combination though. And for me, this is, I think, maybe, like, I don't know, this might be peak Paul Smith for me, along with the X-Men and Doctor Strange and some of that early Marvel stuff. Like for me, Paul Smith on Doctor Strange, X-Men, and now this might be peak Paul Smith, because I think when he switches to the Leave It to Chance style, which is fine, but for me, he kind of loses me a little bit. And I think, oh, by the way, come to think of it, that's also with James Robinson. So
Yeah.
they had
Yeah.
quite the collaboration here. So they
Yeah.
went on to do Leave It to Chance for many issues after this. But Paul Smith switches up his style for that book to more of kind of like what I think of as like the YA Paul Smith style, where
Right.
it's like him drawing kind of like, an action adventure book, with a young woman protagonist. And like, it feels like he's drawing that very purposely in a style that's more like, Tintin meets,
Yep. Yeah.
something like it's an action adventure book for kids almost.
For sure.
And
For sure.
it's fine for what it is, but for me, like that's not the Paul Smith that I love. And I think this golden age, this is like where I look at it and I'm just like, wow, comics don't get much better than this.
No, I think you made a great point where you're like, if the influences like the Norman Rockwell, because what's cool about this book is, you know, although this is a superhero book, they're not in their superhero costumes until the fourth issue. And they're in like America in like knights and what's that one guy? Edward Hopper. Like it feel like the art, like he's doing like just regular Americana in the cities or at like a college or whatever it is. And this, you feel like the leaves falling down on some of these pages. You're like, dude, like this is like it's so it's unique for a comic book, for a superhero comic book to be so devoid of superhero imagery, but he still has iconic.
Yes.
It still feels iconic and like, wow, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, there's
You
a lot of
know?
iconic moments. You're right, dude. Like just that's like it's like atmospheric iconic moments. It's like, yeah, like a moment where somebody just like throws their jacket and walks away and you see it in silhouette, you
Yeah,
know? Or like just like these little moments where I think there's when Johnny Quick comes to visit Alan Scott at his office, there's one panel where like it goes to silhouette for just one panel. And
yeah,
like Paul Smith is finding all these, like you're right, just these oddly iconic moments that are just sort of like in the mundane everyday world, but he's figuring out a way to frame it, a way to show it. Or even that car going off the bridge. It's like he's making choices that are so unique and odd that things do really look like you've never seen them before. Because you could give that script with the car going off the bridge to 1,000 different comic artists, and not a single one of them would choose that angle for the
no,
car because it's
no.
so it's
It's just
so
a weird angle. It's just a
yes.
weird angle that, like, you know what? We'll put that shot in the show notes because it's so fucking amazing. Um, yeah, yeah. It's just, yeah. I mean, I this again. So like the rest of the story, like throws out. They've blown up Dunbar. He comes back as this guy, the Dynaman, and there's this shot of the next, like when he's there at like the arena getting talked about, and it's like you meet all the people in the crowd and they scream at him and go, "Tomorrow is ours," and it's like again, it's just regular people, but it almost feels like an Orson Welles kind of like a Magnificent Ambersons type of shot where it's like I'm just showing
Mm.
you regular people in a weird angle that's like, oh, okay, it's like it's jam packed, but it's not crowded, but you feel like the level of like intensity of what's going on. But this next page, then it's like when the guy who's Captain Triumph, he meets that girl, and he's kind of begins to fall for her. Now I don't know who Captain Triumph is. I never heard of this character before, but you get a sense of what he's about. It's like these two twins, and one is dead. And if there's a little birthmark, and if he touches the birthmark, they are like it's almost like Captain Marvel. You know when Rick Jones and him had to switch places and stuff like that. It's almost like that. And it's like, but when they touch the thing, they become super powerful. They have some sort of power, some sort of probably strength and speed of like 2 or 3 men or something like that. Then the next cool part is our man. It's fucking it's Rex Tyler. He's trying to figure out the pill to go back to being his strength for an hour. And what's really dope about this, and this is what I love about this, and it goes back to the themes about like what's your value as a superhero, what's your value as a man, what's your worth because your identity. When he starts taking the pill and he's fighting these people, he's great. But there's that one moment of fear that he gets, and all of a sudden he's having these wild ass hallucinations and shit. And I think that's
Yes.
just like because he's not felt fear like this. And the new pill does something to his body chemistry where he literally goes insane for I mean he doesn't even know.
That's an amazing spread. Hey there, folks. Thank you so much for listening to Comics Rot Your Brain. This is Steve and Chris, and sorry to interrupt your leisurely listening experience, but we just got to remind y'all that we have a Patreon, and we're so appreciative of each and every one of you who has been signing up for our Patreon. It actually means a lot to us, and it significantly increases the chances of this show continuing on into the future. It's only $2 a month. And for $2 a month, we feel like we're offering you an absurd amount of extra content because we appreciate y'all so much. We're going to be offering 2 free episodes of the show, 2 exclusive episodes for subscribers that are each going to be one-shot solo episodes where Chris and I individually, respectively, discuss books that we want to talk about that are not going to be part of our main feed, for subscribers only. And Chris, what else besides the solo one-shot episodes? What else are we offering people for a measly $2 a month?
You will get to suggest what books we might read for season 2 or season 3 or season 4. Well, it's not a might read. We'll definitely, look and decide which one we're gonna do from what the Patreon community sends in. So that's one thing. Second thing is you'll be able to send us questions for the Q&A episode that we're going to do that will either appear between season 1 and 2 or sometime during season 2 or between season 2 and season 3. But that's what you get to do if you subscribe for $2 a month to our Patreon, which we would so appreciate. And Steve, what book might you talk about for your one shot?
Okay, that's a great question, Chris. There are so many weird, obscure comics that I would love to talk about. And one of those books is a little book called Electric Warrior that was published for 18 issues by DC Comics in 1986 and 87. It was a very strange sci-fi book that was written by Doug Mensch and drawn by Jim Bakey. Jim Bakey, the English artist known primarily for a lot of work on 2000 AD, as well as the Alan Moore collaboration, The Ballad of Halo Jones. Jim Bakey, not particularly known. Actually, wait a second, I'm wrong. No, he did not do The Ballad of Halo Jones. That was Ian Gibson. My fault. Sorry, English comic fans. I always get those two artists mixed up. Jim Bakey's known primarily for 2000 AD and other collaborations with Alan Moore, including he worked on a series called Skiz for 2000 AD with Alan Moore. But Jim Bakey was a Scottish comics artist, did not do a whole lot of work in US comics, but Electric Warrior with Doug Mensch was a particularly ambitious maxi series at a time where DC was really big on the idea of a maxi series, and it ended up going 18 issues, and that was it. But it's a really interesting book, and I think it's kind of like the closest thing DC Comics ever had to publishing a 2000 AD story. And at the time, I remember thinking it was really odd, but quite liking it as a kid. So I'd love to revisit Little Electric Warrior and think about it and consider it carefully, because Doug Mensch, we've talked about him before. He was a dominant writer in the 80s. He wrote Aztec Ace, which we've covered here on this show. And I think Doug Mensch has a lot of work that we'll eventually be looking at, including Six from Sirius and, a bunch of his Batman runs. A lot of great work from Doug Mensch, although it's kind of fallen out of fashion these days because it's very verbose, but I think still worth revisiting. So that's my book.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris? What about you? What are you thinking of for your one shot?
I'm thinking of, there was the X-Men, it's a single issue of X-Men that I always wanted to revisit. It's X-Men 156. It's called Life Death, a love story.
Oh yeah, Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah, Barry Windsor Smith. Yeah, so I haven't read that in forever. Forge was one of my all-time favorite X-Men characters. From that time period in the mid to late 80s. And I remember there was some interesting Barry Windsor Smith covers that he did. And that was one of the few inside issues that he penciled. So I'm going to go back and look at that one issue and talk about that.
That sounds great. I believe there was a Life Death 1 and 2, Chris. Are you going to cover Life Death 1 and Life Death 2 or just Life Death
I'm just going to do Life Death 1. I'm just going to do Life Death 1. Yeah, I'm gonna do just one.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it simple.
All right, we'll see. There may be demand for you to cover the sequel.
for the sequel. I forgot about that, but I remember it. Yeah, now you mentioned it.
Right.
I love it. So
So
everyone,
good.
so you get to hear some crazy takes from Steve and I that'll be solo stuff for $2 a month to support the show. And now we will get back to Comics Rot Your Brain. This 2-panel spread. This his eyes exploding in a weird way, but it's not, and it's like that's the bottom. There's all those pills. It's just the hallucination is so dope. It's so dope, And he comes back and he's like, "You know what I am? I'm an addict. And I'm not an addict for anything. He's not just an addict for the pill, but he's an addict for the adventure that the pill gives him." And that's what he knows is like, I don't know how to solve this. And again, it's like, he can't be what he wants to be. And it's a smart level of storytelling again, he's kind of like he's deconstructing the heroes the way that Alan Moore does, but in a way that is more, I don't want to say pathetic. That's the wrong word, but it's, because what's the guy's name? Owlman. Like Owlman doesn't want to have that power in Watchmen, when he meets with
Or
Rorschach.
Night Owl.
I don't want to do this kind of stuff. And there's nobody who like wants it still and can't take it because of the pill. I mean, the thing with the pill is such a really bizarre. It's an interesting thing to push on, and it kind of touches on like addiction for us as humans, our own addictions, our own demons. But to be a hero is addicting. And that all these other people are like, they had to go cold turkey and they weren't cool with it. None of them were cool with it. And it kind of affected their psyche. Like all these people are like in trouble because they can't be who they want to be. Then where are we next? Oh, we're Tex Thompson again, trying to get the mystery men to unmask themselves. He's got some woman to unmask herself, who's kind of what the tigress,
Right.
The tigress. That's not the same. Feels like a Wonder Woman villain, but it's not. Oh, that's Cheetah.
And then there's also the Marvel character Tigra.
Yeah. And then there's another Paul Smith, and then there's another Paul Kirk story, or we dip back into the Paul Kirk, the Manhunter kind of like what you call it, this part of the thing. And he had a hallucination earlier where he's having these dreams.
Oh yeah. Speaking of psychedelic, like all these Manhunter sequences are very psychedelic. Also, I want to call out the interesting use of the rarely used second person as a writer here, because we all know first person storytelling and we all know third person storytelling. Less commonly used, less commonly known is second person. Second person is like right here, this Manhunter story arc is where like the author is talking directly to the character. If you could only stop running in your dreams, turn and fight, maybe you could do the same in reality. You don't see that very often in fiction. No. It's a fairly rarely used narrative device. James Robinson doing it here.
Yeah, because the books I have, they're all signed by James Robinson. Like I remember meeting him down at Comic-Con, and I had him sign all these.
Oh, cool.
And him and Paul Smith like signed all my issues.
Oh,
and James Robinson, he did a book. The first time I ever read any of his stuff, he did a book for Malibu called Firearm.
I read Firearm. Yes, he was like the fucking dude. It was kind of like he was an LA. Was he like an LA hitman, private eye kind of dude? Yeah, I read that.
And I remember meeting him one time at the Golden Apple when it was like at the main store on. He's really, really cool, smart, fun guy to talk to. I thought I was really great. So I saw him later on, like a couple years later, to see to sign the Golden Age. He actually remembered me. He's like,
"Oh wow,
I met you before. Did I meet?" He was like, "Wait a minute, I know you. Did I meet you?" I was like, "What? What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah. Did I meet you somewhere?" I was like, "Yeah. I met you up at we were talking about Firearm." And he was like, "Oh yeah. I was shocked that he kind of just remembered me. Didn't know my name, but just remembered my face.
Oh, that's really cool.
I thought it was really, really cool. But it was like, but he's like a real, like, as evidenced by his Starman book.
Yeah.
He's like he loves literature, and he loves what the like he's a interesting kind of like word. I hate to use the word wordsmith, but he is because who's going to use second person? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like almost nobody was going to
No,
use it, but he does
you're
it in a
right.
really fascinating way.
You're right.
Um, yeah,
And
it's dope. It's really really dope.
it is
And
it's super sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, it's just like, and this last little piece with the manhunter and that fat dude is saving him, and I mean, like the panel layout is so kind of charged and electric, and it's like, who are these guys hunting the manhunter? And that's what's cool too, is that like, you know, I remember reading this, and then I realized there was like Manhunter was then later on revised by Goodwin and Walt Simonson. And I was like, I don't know which is I mean, he's not that interesting as a character in his Golden Age version, obviously compared to the Silver Age version. But the way he's deployed in this story is unbelievable, because it's really the only action in like the first 3 issues, right? Is
Yeah.
is each of the Manhunter stories. You're like, what the fuck is going on? Except maybe this stuff with Robot Man, when Robot Man is like, I think issue 1 when they first fight him,
Yeah.
he's like,
And also Alan Scott and his 2-page fight with
oh yeah, little
Sportsmaster.
fight. But Robot Man, I think it was in issue 1 where he like rips that guy's arm off or some shit like that.
Yeah, that might have been issue 1.
Yeah, there's like some weird, when they find Robot Man and he's like fighting someone and he's like out in the streets and he literally like, there's this weird panel in issue 1 where he's fighting someone and he's like, the panel says, flesh bleeds, bone breaks. And then the next panel is like this weird silhouette where it's all black with the silhouette is in red. And he's throwing one guy one way and another guy the other way. And the guy's arm is snapped off. And it's just like, fuck. And then later on in the final page of that panel is when he's like trying to say he's not really human. It's like his face is like a smiling man, but he's got all this blood on it. And you're like, God damn, dude, like you fucking like ripped someone apart. And it lets you know, again, like this guy, he wasn't around the people who kind of kept him in check. So all the heroes again are gone, and he like went, and they were like, he's more a robot than man now. He's lost that edge of humanity that he becomes, or that he had. Final stuff in issue 2 is you see Tex Thompson. He's writing in this diary that he keeps locked, and then you see, Daniel Dunbar is up here doing cocaine and perhaps even heroin. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And I love it because the mystery is so like, what is going on? Like, you don't know anything about the mystery.
Yeah, they don't spell it out. It's just kind of like weird, like what the relationship is and what's happening with these two guys here. But it's just kind of like some disturbing sounding dialogue. Our plans, our itinerary goes well. Truman's in the White House. I knew he'd win this year. That I was too new in the arena to compete. But in 52, things will be different. I'll run, I'll win, I'll become president, and we will rule America. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on with these guys? Like, what is their plan? What are they gonna do here? And then what's his name? The kid doing cocaine, Dinah kid, Dunbar. He says, no, you're wrong. By then, you'll have convinced the country to attack Russia and China. And with me and other super beings doing the fighting, victory is assured. Therefore, in 52, when you're elected president, sniff, he does a huge line of coke. We will rule the world. So it's pretty dark.
It's a pretty dark exit. And again, like just like in issue 1, last 2 pages are Tex Thompson and fucking and Daniel Dunbar, and it's like he's totally changed him from a gullible kid to somebody who's got some dangerous ideas. And it's just like, what's going on? Now, what's cool is, I haven't talked about the covers, but the cover of issue 1 and issue 2, fucking amazing,
gorgeous covers.
Just, I mean, like, just the design. He's got that weird, it's that kind of like a Art Deco-y kind of like text for the title page.
Yeah, and it's raised on the cover, as I recall. You've got the physical copies.
It is. It's embossed.
I remember that. Yeah,
it's so dope. And fucking like, this is the thing about it, is that cover I think there used to be a poster for this cover, issue number 1. I know there was a poster for
So it's
this.
like a cover of Life magazine that's on fire and it's burning with a picture of this classic sort of Justice Society in a all in heroic poses, and it's burning and it's on fire, but it's like in a circular shape, but it looks like a
Yeah,
magazine cover.
yeah, yeah. Pretty
Yeah,
amazing stuff. And
it's
again, like
yeah,
Paul
it
Smith and
is.
Richard Ory, they went. I don't know. They went off the charts with this shit, man.
They really did. It's
They,
gorgeous work. I
but,
mean,
but
really
you just
gorgeous.
mentioned something to me that made me think of something. Um, oh, he said about he wants to be the I'm reading this book. It's called by uh hold on, let me get it because it's right next to
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Well, while you're looking for it, I just want to give props to DC Comics in the 90s for crediting the colorist, Richard Ory, on the cover of the book in 93, which, DC, I think, had started doing that, I think, in the early 90s, crediting colorists on titles, like on covers occasionally. And that's just a very progressive thing for a comic company to be doing. And, that's something you still don't see today. A lot of the
Yeah.
times the colorist getting a credit on the cover. And so that's, I mean, you see it certainly more today, but like back then it was a very rare thing. So that's nice to see it. Richard Ory, well-deserved cover credit.
Well, yeah, because this book is not the same without him. Again, not to harp on the X-Men, the Watchmen uh comparisons. Um, but the coloring in this is like heads and shoulder above Watchmen. Heads
Hmm.
and shoulder.
I cannot disagree with you. I think for my money, I mean, Paul Smith as an artist is for me somebody that like very few people come close to. And so Paul Smith being colored by Richard Ory here, like this is an all-star, just incredible combination. Yeah, I'm with you. I would pick the art on Golden Age over the art on Watchmen, just purely from an aesthetic point of view. To me, it's much more like aesthetically pleasing. It's much more up my alley.
Yeah. So I'm reading this book called Before the Storm. It's about Barry Goldwater and the rise of conservatism in America, right?
Oh wow.
And it's written by a guy who's like he's a conservative historian. And
I think.
the book is
Oh,
not
oh,
like
you were reading this book a little while ago too. I think one of the last times that we met up at the alcove a few months ago for dinner. I think
yeah,
you
well,
meant
because
you mentioned this book.
it's 700 pages,
Okay,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
that
a
makes sense.
long fucking book.
That makes sense.
It's good though because, but it's interesting because it's talking about this same period where he's talking about where it's like where the Republicans wanted to take control, and Tex Thompson is feeling like a Barry Goldwater type, the way he's kind of like
Mm,
maneuvering and like trying to embrace like McCarthyism and just like an unrepentant to the liberal agenda, which is essentially the way he's playing it. Like before we know the reveal, which is going to happen in issue 3, it's like, oh, this guy's really like he's really showing to be like a Republican.
yeah.
And I think it's interesting because this guy, this Richard Prostine wrote this book for. It's like he's next. The next book is called like Nixon Land, and then is one's called like Reagan's America is the third book.
Mm,
And he wrote a book or op-ed about the rise of Trump in like 2018, and he was like, we Republican historians, we got it all wrong,
mm,
because you read it and it's like they dismiss the uh the racist right.
mm,
They is it and I was kind of like, well, yeah, because you guys are academics, and by academic in general, then you're gonna be progressive just because you're an academic. So it doesn't matter that you have conservative beliefs. And the whole thing, and even the guy named William F. Buckley, those guys are trying to form the new version of what it meant to be a conservative. So they're really progressive conservatives, is what it is.
mm,
Is
mm.
that they just didn't want the liberal agenda. And what they fail to look at is is like the rise of like William Metzger and those type of like right wing like racist extremists and stuff like that. And it's like when I look back at this now and I read this book, it's like Thompson, he's appealing to that type of message that like Trump was appealing to, of like the reactionary type of past of America. I mean,
Yeah.
he's demanding that he
Yeah.
wants that from the people, and they're eating it up, and I think he can get it as the senator. And it's like, yeah, this is a dangerous level of like, it's weird when he's writing this in 92 that this is what he's like kind of like thinking about it. Obviously, James Robinson's a little older.
Yeah.
He's probably like maybe, you know, I'm not sure how old he is, but he can't be, he's got to be at least maybe 5 to 10 years older than us when he's writing this at the time. And so means he's, maybe he's a child of like 1960 or something like that. So he has a different understanding of what it means to be a conservative, or not that he's a conservative, but what conservatives mean in America, and about how dangerous they were. And that's why because Tex Thompson's, his rhetoric doesn't sound like, it sounds jingoistic in the right way that's dangerous, that we understand now, that we quite get then, but we know is dangerous because of who he's really appealing to.
Yeah.
And then the reveal is, that's why, when you find out who these people are, you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
that's why it like sounds right, because it's I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but it's like
Yeah.
these next, so we get in issue 3. It's now like 1949, so it's been like 3 years since the first book, issue 1, and it's like, and it's, everyone is kind of like coasting along and not making it well. And I love this part where Carter Hall is like, he's gone deep into his like Egyptian
Yes.
history and who he thinks he is, and being reincarnated. And it's really,
Hawkman
yeah,
gone mad.
yeah, he's gone mad. He's gone real mad. Um, and Ted Knight's trying to get back, or he's out of the sanitarium trying to get, and then it's their main thing is they want all these, like Dunbar has this vow, I want to know who the mystery men are. Please unmask yourselves so America can move forward.
Hmm.
And because he needs to know who who his enemies are. Once the reveal is gonna happen, it was gonna happen really pretty quickly. There's more of this cool stuff with Manhunter with his hallucinatory dreams. The dreams are so, I mean, like this imagery in the dreams, and like this one panel where he's like a rat and he turns into a man is part of the, I mean, that little like
Yeah.
that evolution is like,
The rat imagery is really disturbing. Like that one page, I think maybe this is the one you're thinking of too, in issue 3,
yeah,
where it's like the rats are chewing off Paul Kirk Manhunter's face.
yeah,
They're chewing off his face, and then in that same page there's an eagle that's laid out on like what looks like a laboratory table, and the eagle is like fucking laid out with all these rats like eating the eagle. And like it's a really disturbing page with the rats and Paul Kirk and the eagle. And it's genuinely a nightmarish series of images on that page. Like
sure.
it's rare to like see a comic page that's genuinely disturbing in a, especially in a mainstream comic, but it's a fairly disturbing nightmarish image there, I gotta say.
No. I mean, what's cool about this? It feels like something that Kelly Jones would do.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Or
It's like you see the tendons of his flesh being ripped off, man. Like his his actual, like his whole face is being chewed off, and like all kinds of tendons. The rats are eating everything.
This is
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it's
like the
horrific.
level, like it's these dual page splash pages of like the hallucinations and the bad dreams that Paul has, and that Rex Tyler has, is really a smart kind of like shocking way to get into like their psychosis.
It's pretty amazing. And did you notice on this page that the rats are turning into people?
No, that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm
okay.
saying. Yeah,
That's
there's like that
that's
evolution thing of
that.
like
Oh, I didn't
the
catch
rat
that
to the
before.
people.
Okay,
It's
okay.
like,
Oh, so that's what you meant. Okay, I gotcha. I didn't catch that. Like it's literally, yeah, the rats are turning into people. That is wild.
I mean, they're turning into the scientists, because later on, once we get the reveal of what's happening,
Mm.
then it's like, oh, I see why the rats are the scientists because they're like rats, they're betraying us, you know.
Mm.
And you know, that's the Paul Kirk story, like that little interlude. And they're on like a train, like they're in like a damn, there's some hobo stuff in that, you
Right.
know.
Right.
It's like, I mean, that last panel there where they're like on that train on the bridge, it's like, again, he's chosen this angle, that this composition that's just like is where he excels at.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the guy Alan Zellens in Alien Legion, right? Where he chooses these kind of angles where he's gonna be like inside of
Oh, or like,
nature in a
oh,
way.
you mean like Sirocco?
Sirocco,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sirocco. And it's just like it's a smart way to kind of like transition in and out of like locations.
Yeah.
And then he jumps into like this Johnny Quick and Liberty Bell. They finalize their divorce, you know, and then he's hanging out with Alan Scott again, and Alan Scott is looking at his ring, and he's like, I mean, he's the weight of it is still, because his
Mhm.
people are getting fired. Oh, that one guy shot himself. Like one of his writers shot himself because he didn't want to like the stuff with the communism, the HUAC committee. I mean, it's interesting kind of blend of what's happening in America at that time. The rise of like taking these oaths against loyalty oaths, and you have this which mimics the reveal of who the villains are in this. Um, and there's more about the story with like Liberty Bell getting her job and Tarantula being a fuck up. And what's crazy is like that prose they represent, they show of his writing. Like it's
Mhm.
just terrible writing. It's just fucking terrible writing.
Are
It's
you
so bad.
dissing the tarantula as a novelist,
Yeah,
Chris?
it's just terrible. It's
Wait,
so bad.
let's read that. So the text says, such was her haste that the lipstick she'd bought yesterday afternoon was left to roll off the top of her dresser, falling to the floor and breaking its fine new redness on the filth of the carpet. This Lulabelle hadn't noticed, nor would she have cared if she had. The door to her trailer was thrown open by her with a force that only passion and longing can bring. That and the hope that this figure, this hulking male form, was Hank's. The heat of the morn was as dry and burning as all the mornings that week. She noticed that fact no more than her broken lipstick.
I mean, it's terrible. It's just fucking terrible.
well, he agrees with you. The next panel, he throws it off
He's
the
like,
desk.
rubbish,
Rubbish!
get it out. I can't write.
not
And
not
he
worth the
pulls out a
paper.
bottle. I love
Oh
it. I
god,
love it.
that's
What's great
great.
about that though is every writer knows that. Every writer knows that feeling of I wrote shit and I can't save it. But now we begin to unfold the story where Tex Thompson's lover, like she's up here crying. Like it's this whole thing where it's like the way he was fucking her was just like beating her up, you know, and then he's there like writing in this journal, and then does the robot man kill someone? Carter Hall's going crazy some more. Is that no, that's not Carter Hall. That's fucking Dunbar doing some satanic ritual.
Yeah, that's a wild page with Dunbar here too, by the way. He's naked drawing pentagrams on a concrete floor and like sacrificing things, and I mean, yeah, Dunbar, and like he looks incredibly disturbing in that last panel.
Oh, completely. But you see, he's like got cocaine and heroin. He's like really doing it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
He's
you're
really
right.
doing it up.
Wow. Oh,
you
shit.
know.
Jesus.
And then we're back to Rex Tyler's story, which it's interesting because like these stories they get into like these personal stories don't have anything to necessarily do with like the overarching mystery, but it's just kind of fallout of what they're about when they can't be who they want to be. And I
Yeah.
think part of all this story's themes are, you can't turn your back on who you really are, and everybody wants to. And then the one guy who wants it the most, Rex Tyler, he's fucking himself because the pill is just like it's too much for him. This is a big fight with Tarantula and Liberty Bell, which I think is great. And then we go back and we meet this more stuff with Paul Kirk. He's being chased by, those
and
those rat
and he's
turned to scientists.
and he's carrying an eagle wrapped in a blanket.
Yeah, yeah, like it's like some baby,
Yeah,
you know.
that's so awesome. I love the panel where you're close on the eagle in the blanket, and it says "Save the eagle." It's like
Yeah,
a little baby.
it's just crazy. He's so good. He's so
Yeah,
good at this. Then
yeah.
Paul Kirk is like, I gotta fucking get my act together. But again, it's that second person narrative,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And then and then they go to meet Carter Hall, who's gonna hypnotize Paul Kirk to find out what he does, what he doesn't remember. And it gets this whole story about Tex Thompson. Tex Thompson, like there in Germany during the war and what he was doing. And they both were like, like doing the most, like just this underground kind of killing and stuff like that. And then he stumbles across he's given a murder to go into some like German castle to kill some big player. And he turns around and he stumbles and sees what's going on. He sees that this actress is dead, went missing, and Tex Thompson is there on this table, and he realizes that there's some weird kind of like brain surgery going on, and he can't put it together. And then we jump over to Tigress and the guy who plays Captain Triumph, their little love affair, and the woman who, what's her name, like the woman who I can't remember, yeah, Paula, who was Tex Thompson's like girlfriend. She comes over and she has the diary of Tex Thompson, and then it fills in the final piece, the villain, the ultra humanite.
Oh yeah,
Figured
the
out how to transform.
ultra humanite.
Oh, the ultra humanite. He's figured out how to change, to switch his brain. And he
Yes.
switched his brain into this woman, and then he switched his brain into Tex Thompson. And that's what Paul Kirk has seen. And that's why his memory it's so horrific to
Yeah.
him to know that their old nemesis is doing this thing, and that has killed his boy. And he like stumbles out and falls and like breaks his head, and uh 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 and his amnesia is exacerbated by the shock of
Yeah.
what he's seen. But they realize, oh my God, you know, we have a problem because the champion of America is really an arch villain in disguise. And then like the coolest kind of like thing is that they go, oh my God, there's still someone else that the guy Dunbar is. And they go, we can't believe this. But they hold off on that reveal for this whole issue, for the rest of the issue. And it's like, it's pretty crazy. What's like, it's pretty, I mean, and it's all kind of wrapped up with Paul Kirk and you fill out that, oh my God, the guy who's the war hero, he's like the ultimate villain that the Justice Society has faced. And now they're all in trouble, and they calling up Alan Scott, and he's like, dude, but Alan Scott, is he taking the ring out, or he's putting the ring away? I think he's putting the ring away
Mm-hmm.
in the his safe, when when Carter Hall and Johnny Quick get together and they go, here's what's really going on. Here's the real identity of like not Dunbar, well, Dunbar and Tex Thompson, but they don't say who Dunbar's, whose brain is trapped inside Dunbar. And that's for the hold off to issue 4, the
And
grand
and
finale.
and right going into that grand finale, I just got to call out that final page, the full page, last page of issue 3. Just a stunning Paul Smith image that like it looks like it's just so iconic. It's just beautiful, like
Well,
gorgeous shot.
I love it because it's like Green Lantern. He's kind of like Ozymandias in a way. It's just like his the way he is in the Watchmen book. He's like kind of in that. Is that who it is? Who's in the tower and he's like not really part of everybody, and he
Mhm.
feels like he's a big businessman.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like it's very similar because he's got that big like Atlas type of character as his
Yeah.
symbol. It's like the weight again, like the weight of the world is on my shoulders
Yes.
as Green Lantern, as Alan Scott, and
Yes.
then the phone's just ringing in this final panel, which is like Johnny Quick calling him, getting ready to tell him, you know what the fuck is happening, dude? The wildest shit imaginable.
Yeah, and I think that that last page, like, I don't know if it's a reference to Ayn Rand and, like, Atlas Shrugged,
Oh, it
but
probably is.
it
Oh, it
looks pretty
totally is.
it looks pretty similar. Like, here, I just pulled up the 50th anniversary edition of Atlas Shrugged, and if you look at that,
Yeah.
it
Oh
looks
yeah.
it looks pretty close. It looks pretty close to that
Oh,
last
no, it
page.
completely is. It
Yeah.
completely is. Now that you mentioned that, it is because I've seen that Ayn Rand thing, and
Yeah.
earlier on, maybe it's issue 1 when we first see, Alan Scott's kind of like his media thing. It is an Atlas character, Cold Night
Yeah.
Global again, and it's the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Wow. I never thought about that. That's a great,
Yeah.
uh, I don't say pull, but a great it's a great linkage, a great
Yeah,
linkage
yeah.
there, but
Well, it's like you said about Robinson, though. It's like he draws from like a lot of different literary kind of sources and whatnot. And I think Robinson is a very well read, very clever writer, and he's writing stories on multiple layers here. And honestly, the bad guy, the villain, being like the U.S. political figure icon who now ultimately is out to get the heroes. It's also got shades of. Damon Lindelof's Watchmen as well. Like in terms of the Lindelof's Watchmen, like you've got that bad guy who also is the senator who's like seemingly heroic senator who turns out to be a real baddie
oh yeah.
in
Yeah, yeah.
Watchmen. And that's I wouldn't be surprised if Damon Lindelof read Golden Age. I'm sure he very likely did 25 years ago. And it's a similar
Well, I mean,
similar arc.
I'm sure he probably read it recently too, because when he was doing that show, because as a comic fan, as a Watchmen fan, you have to know this book. You have to know
Yeah.
it's considered by some maybe a knockoff of Watchmen, but like I think it's superior, and only because there's more gravitas to what it is, and there's in terms of who the characters are, what they're going through, and kind of like how we kind of um eh, the like I think the way that we contextualize them because of who they are. And I also feel like, like being set in the 50s when those characters were about something, whereas in Watchmen, like they're over, like what do they call it? The Minutemen. It's like the
Yeah.
Minutemen had been over for like 20, 30 years when
Yeah.
the comedian is getting killed in that first issue. And it doesn't feel like it has the same kind of, I just think it's harder to parse because when you tell me the comedian's dead, I don't know what that means at first. It means something to the
Mm,
character, but it doesn't mean anything to me
right.
as the reader. But when you
Yeah.
tell me the Green Lantern is giving it up, I'm like, ooh, Johnny Quick is
Yeah.
giving it up, and Jay Garrick, because Jay Garrick isn't in this, but he is said in that first issue when Johnny Quick is like trying to
He
decide
he talks about he talks about him a little bit.
yeah, he's kind of like, well, who's faster? Is it me or Flash? The Flash is like, the world doesn't need a Flash anymore, and he's like done. you know. But I think he comes back in issue 4. Issue 4
Well, by the way,
is
that's a fascinating point you make about the weight and like the power of like icons, because you're right. The comedian, obviously, of course, when you first read Watchmen, doesn't have that built-in kind of iconic status. And as you're reading it, you only respond to that story, via the brilliance of Watchmen and the brilliance of the storytelling, but you don't have the weight of an actually iconic character going into that. Whereas with this story, you're right. You've got like Green Lantern and the Flash and like all the history that these characters bring to them. And it is a different kind of a toy box to be playing with here. And I think you're staking out some very bold territory by declaring your preference for Golden Age over Watchmen, and I respect your very bold choice here, and I expect we'll hear from some of the listeners on that. And
Look, I'm sure the listeners be like, Chris, fuck you, what you're talking about, Watchmen, blah blah blah. But I mean, look, and it's just like my thing is Watchmen requires I mean, look, the reason why I mean, this is not the only reason, but one of the reasons I feel the Watchmen has all that back matter, like those big chunks of
yes,
prose in the back,
yes,
is that Alan Moore is he's trying to build this level of familiarity with the characters by telling you their previous adventures so that so you get a sense of who they were, how they operated, what they meant to each other, the kind of stuff they did, so that when they begin to get unraveled and when the comedian like rapes like
yeah.
Silk Spectre and stuff like that, or is that a name, Silk Spectre, or
I think that's right. The original Silk Spectre or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah,
yeah, it's it kind of I mean I like it adds more weight to it because
yeah,
it adds more it's just it's kind of like um it's kind of like if you look at Born Again, right? Like Born Again and you look at Dark Knight, like those things have a lot of value as the reader because you're like, oh shit, here's Karen Page. We haven't seen in like 10 years in the Daredevil comics
yeah.
or something like that. Maybe it's not that long, but at least 3 to 5 years. Well, the whole Frank Miller run, she wasn't in it, right?
Hmm.
And then for another 2 years, you know, uh, someone else is doing the book, and then Miller comes back with Mazzucchelli, and the first page is of Karen Page down in like some South American shithole, like buying heroin. And you're like,
Right, right,
and it's like, oh, she used to be a porn actress. You're like, wait. Last time I remember Karen Page, she was just leaving New York to go to California. And it's like, there's weight to that story because you're bringing back someone you knew that you had some sort of like emotional attachment to.
sure,
And Batman, Dark Knight, we know it's like, well, fuck, that's Bruce Wayne in the future. We never seen that. It's kind of like, I mean, it's like there's like that Old Man Logan and I mean, like a story. Like think about it, right? Uh, Old Man Logan. If that comes out around the time that Miller did his Wolverine like miniseries, when he goes to Japan, to become a gaijin and stuff
oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, with Claremont, yeah,
Yeah, that Old Man Logan story wouldn't have any weight to us because we haven't had enough Logan adventures and his rise to fame in the comic like ecosystem for us to have that Old Man Logan story like having. I mean, it would work, but it wouldn't
right.
work the same way,
It wouldn't
you
have the
know.
same it's the same weight, it's true, and it's like you say about Alan Moore, it's like he's given you all those text pieces in Watchmen to build the context for what these characters were and what they represented, so you can feel the sense of loss, and you can feel, what has been lost because he's telling you what they were, and he's explaining so much of, the context of that whole world, and I love it and it's brilliant, but you're right. He's doing a lot of heavy lifting to kind of fill in that gravitas and that weight.
Because it's interesting you bring up Damon Lindelof and his thing because that it's sorry, episode 3 of his series. It might have been episode
Mhm.
2, but I'm pretty sure episode 3 was that one with Jean Smart.
Yeah, that was
And
episode 3. Great episode.
yeah, and it's like, and she's there on the phone and she's calling Doctor Manhattan and and I mean that episode did a lot of emotional heavy lifting about who Doctor Manhattan was and what she meant to that, to which what he meant to Jean Smart's character from 20, 30 years ago. That if you never read the Watchmen comic, that that episode builds the emotional heft of what the Watchmen, what the Minutemen meant to society, like in that episode. And it's like, I have to do that. I mean, it's great that they did that, but it's but it's like, but you have to do that because you can't rely upon the cultural value of something, and that's why I think the Golden Age has to me, it resonates a little stronger to me as a reader of comics and a reader of superhero comics at the time. Like I always just, I mean, reading it, I'm just like, I mean, I knew who all these people were and like their backstories. Like I said, like the Rex Tyler thing, Johnny Quick and Liberty Bell, like, and the whole thing with Sportsmaster was like, you see the human again. It's like, the big knock on DC Comics was we don't know them as people. And that was that whole thing that Stan Lee did with Marvel was like, I want the heroes to be heroes, but I want their alter egos to have more like weight and power so the reader can identify more.
Right.
And that's what James Robinson does, like with these characters, that if you were reading this stuff when it originally came out that you weren't getting. Like you weren't getting this sense that Liberty Bell gave up her life to be like a housewife that she doesn't like, but she's in love with this guy that's eroding because he has his own crisis of confidence, and that's like affecting her, but she doesn't know how to get out of the marriage. There's the same kind of problem she had with Johnny Quick. Like, it's just this domestic strife, like to what's going on, like when you read them and you're like, oh, this feels like Parker and Mary Jane, but like later on in their life, and
Mm.
that's what it felt like to me, like reading it again now, and I think like reading it several times in the past. I could see the how it was all fracturing in a way, and I don't remember Watchmen like having that kind of emotional response for me.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, like I mean, I'm not even saying Watchmen is a bad book. Like it's a groundbreaking piece of work, and it deserves to be where it is in the pantheon of great comics and stuff like that. I just think that this book works better for me on an emotional level. And also because it's like
Sure.
like this, like the reveal that Hitler is, that's the big reveal, that Hitler's brains are put into to Daniel Dunbar. Like that is shockingly original to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what did you do? Like, wait a minute, because you
Yeah.
took it from what's the ultra humanite. You took it from that guy who I kind of knew as a villain, and you then like pulled in this real world stuff of, I'm not just gonna like trick you, like, oh, this is some other villain, or like, is it Parzival or one of these other kind of villains that they've kind of tricked you. It's like, oh no, we didn't let Hitler die, we saved Hitler. And I was like, that's a genius level kind of like trick reveal, what the plan was. And I remember around this time I was reading this, I was so into like World War II and like the rise, how Nazism like arose. I remember
Mm-hmm.
reading this book. There's this sociologist was saying that like there's things in like certain cultures, certain nationalities that would give rise to like an authoritarian like leader like Hitler. And the guy pointed out that here's the scale of like, here's the number 1, 2, 3, 4 countries that have a cultural thing that will allow for that. And actually, the United States was ranked number 1, and Germany was ranked number
Wow.
3. And like
Wow.
and Switzerland was ranked between like the two of them. And I was like, it's
Oh,
blowing my
yo,
mind. It's
that's fascinating.
just blowing my mind. This was being said. And then the thing is, it's like you think about it, and like, look what's happening now to our culture. Like the people, and I was at this thing the other night with Billy Ray, right? He invited me to this charity
The
thing.
screenwriter.
The screenwriter Billy Ray, he wrote Captain Phillips and the Hunger Games and some other shit, really
Ton of
cool
stuff.
shit, tons of cool shit. State of Play and but he invited me to this thing called For Common Defense, which is this left wing veteran group charity thing, and he said something at the end about what conservatives are about. He said, this is why the GOP is in free fall. He said that conservatives hate chaos, and that that every big story that they've able to use as a talking point or whatever their ads, stuff like that, it all preys on, if you do this, chaos will ensue. If if you vote from
Mm.
if you vote for Michael Dukakis, then these black men will come out, they'll come out on furloughs and they'll rape your wives. That's chaos. And I was like, that's a really smart point. He was like, Republicans and conservatives they're willing to give up their civil liberties to maintain order and to not embrace chaos. And the language that Tex Thompson is talking about, the same language that Hitler was talking about, that Trump talked about, was, how do we contain the chaos? We open the borders like the liberals want. That's going to be chaos. And I just was like, this is where, again, that book I was reading, that Before the Storm, that's why Tex Thompson's language now, when I'm reading it, it just sounds like he's appealing to that level of America that is willing to give up its civil rights, its freedom to maintain, to avoid chaos. But the crazy thing is, they're gonna bring chaos because it's Hitler and the Ultra Humanites who are the actual, like, the string pullers of all this shit. I mean, this is a brilliant piece of writing, I think.
there's there is a lot going on in the golden age, and clearly James Robinson had a lot on his mind with the story. And I mean, I think this was critically acclaimed for sure when it came out, and I believe it was nominated for some Eisners and such, and maybe won some as well. But yeah, this is another one of those books, like, that I think really speaks to the reason that we wanted to do this podcast, Chris, because it's a pretty extraordinary piece of work here, and it's not a comic that is really top of mind that you hear people talking about very often these days. I certainly haven't heard anybody amongst my comic book circles talk about the Golden Age for quite a while. For a long, long ass time. And I mean, shit, it's a hell of a piece of work, and I think it's a book that deserves to be well remembered, and just remembered. Period. Because Robinson's a really interesting writer. Paul Smith is, I think, one of the great comic artists of his generation. And, this is a book that should be in print, and hopefully will stay in print forever, because it's really a striking and really just lovely piece of work.
Well, I think it was interesting about it is that why it might not be that people talk about it enough is it doesn't have Superman and Batman in it.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's like, to most people's minds, it's like more the B team or the C team, which is, the Justice Society slash All Star Squadron of it all. And, I mean, I guess Jeff Johns and David Goyer, they loved these JSA characters, and they went on to relaunch them post Golden Age. So
Right.
I would imagine this book was a hugely formative influence on what Johns and Goyer
For
did
sure. For
coming out of
sure.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember asking David about this, and
Oh, cool.
he was saying that Jeff had Jeff had no idea who these characters were really until he read this book. He kind of knew
Really?
of them. I mean, he kind of
Mm,
knew of them, but he didn't know how they could be used in a in a modern day context
right.
until this book came out. And I think that, um, because again, as an Elseworlds book, people could dismiss it because it's not canon.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Elseworlds to people, and they usually think about, like, that one Elseworlds, what, the Red Sun or something like that, when Superman he becomes a Soviet. Like, there's that,
Oh, yeah,
there's,
yeah. Red Superman, Red Sun.
yeah, like, there's other Elseworld books that people talk about more because
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Oh,
Batman or
oh,
Superman.
yeah. Batman, Gotham by Gaslight.
Yeah, Gotham by Gaslight, and it's like, oh, because everyone's such a big fans of that, and without having Batman or Superman, like, in this,
Yeah,
then it kind of, like, I think it doesn't have. I think some people just don't, like, those heroes are so massive
yeah.
to anybody that they'll be buying anything that has those characters in it, and they're like, well, okay, you know what, I know Green Lantern and
You're
Hawkman,
you're
and
saying you're saying the tarantula doesn't have the same pole, Chris? Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
but again, but you know what it's like? It's like I was telling someone the other day, we were talking about television shows, and he said, this friend of mine said, yeah, there's a German cop show. And I said, Dogs of Berlin. He's like, you've seen it? I was like, yeah, I love it. And he's like, you're the only person I know who's seen this show. This show came out like in 2018 or something like that. I was like, yeah, it's easily the best cop show. It's one of the best cop shows ever,
Mm,
by far.
yeah.
But I don't know anyone who's seen it because it's a German show.
Yeah.
And but it's like I love niche stuff, because niche stuff that doesn't like there's no, because it's like you have to do something really substantial in a way, and that's a if you're gonna be doing Superman or Batman, it's gonna be a big idea that's simple at the same time. Gotham by Gaslight or the Red Sun. It's like, oh, Superman is a Nazi or Superman is a Soviet. Blah 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 blah. To tell a story that's as nuanced as this, you can't. You have to have these smaller characters like Captain Triumph and Tarantula and Liberty Bell and who's the guy with the lightning bolts? I forget his name. We didn't mention him, but the guy with the
Oh, like Johnny Thunder.
Johnny Thunder, and it's like like if you deal with those characters, you can delve into who they are and like hurt them the way that Robinson hurts his characters. Like he doesn't do it it's not a malicious way
No.
that he's got contempt for them. He's trying to like he really makes them human in a way where it's like you feel the gravity of their choices, and you can do that and really make them like the emotional pain you can give them is because where like Batman doesn't feel that way. So
Yeah.
Superman doesn't have that. He doesn't have this kind of problems. And then you kind of like, and you leave them in the realm of like a Greek god, as
Yeah.
opposed to that you're not. It's like now I can like delve into them in a way. It's like Tarantula is like drinking heavily.
Tarantula is like beating his wife Liberty Bell, which
Yeah,
kind of bummed me out because I actually did like the Tarantula character in All Star Squadron when I was a kid, and so reading this, I was like, ah, shit, Tarantula's a wife beater who's a drunk. Oh no,
because it's like you know what he's failed. It's
yeah,
because again, it's like everybody in this has failed because they didn't fight the war, and it's like how do they respond to it? Like, he had that book, but he's like I can't write another book, and I mean like that sense, like his sense of like I have no purpose because I can't write anymore, and he has to like lash out, and like they all have to lash out, or they either lash out at themselves or they lash at the people around them that they think they love. I mean, it's
well,
why Ted Knight is in the state asylum. He's lashed out at himself.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I guess that is why I suppose perhaps a big part of why DC probably insisted this be an Elseworld story is because of, like, as you say, that Robinson was choosing to quote unquote hurt these characters or just make extreme choices with them, like putting them in, mental institutions and things like that. But really what we're talking about here is just like dope dramatic storytelling. This is
Right.
just like you take a level of extremity and you bring it to bear on all the characters because that's how you tell great stories. And you can't do that with the mainstream iconic characters at any company for obvious reasons because they're corporate playthings and their corporate IP. And of course, that is the reason, as we all know, that Alan Moore had to take those Charlton characters and instead reimagine them.
Right.
And, because even though they were just the Charlton characters, quote unquote, DC was still like, hey, you can't do this crazy shit with these characters. Like, go make up your own. And again, it's like that same kind of thing. Like, you can't do that in canon. You can't really break these characters. And, I get it on one level because that's sort of the engine that the whole thing runs on in corporate comics. But it also speaks to, I think, what Jonathan Hickman, I've heard him talk about this, how like mainstream comics in America, it's perpetual second act forever. And that's what you're writing. You're writing the second act of all these characters' lives, but you're never getting to really tell a full story with these characters unless it's some sort of thing outside of canon, like an old man Logan story or a Dark Knight Returns or whatever. But otherwise, you're in the second act with these people in perpetuity, and that's it. And
That's
you
an
kind of
interesting
have to be,
point.
you know?
Yeah. It's funny because like in this comic, Ted Knight, Starman, he's a little unhinged, right?
Hmm.
And I kind of remember the way that Starman is written in James Robertson's Starman is the father, Ted Knight, is a little unhinged because it's the
Mm,
son. You know, I never asked him this. I wonder. It feels like he still used what he could from this as canon for
right.
writing that book.
Yeah, I bet you he did, because it's like, because he went on and did that epic Starman run, that would make perfect sense that for him, this was canon, you
Yeah,
know? That makes
yeah,
perfect sense, and oh, and by the way, I did look up the, Eisner situation with this book,
right.
and The Golden Age was nominated for Best Finite Series at the Eisner Awards. Did not win, apparently, and no other nominations, which is really kind of a crime. It looks like Paul Smith, Richard Ory were blanked at the nominations that year. So I'd like to get a list of the 1994 Eisner nominations. I would like to see what 5 books were better colored, better drawn than
I
this
don't
book.
think. I mean,
I
you know
mean,
what?
maybe Nexus, maybe Nexus is up there. I don't know what else is being published at that exact moment off the top of my head, but I mean, shit,
Wait
that's
a
kind
minute.
of
Wait a minute.
crazy. 94 Eisner Awards. Chris is looking it up.
I mean, I have to look it up now because
Shit.
it's just like it's kind of shocking to me. Um. Okay, serialized continuing story. Okay, so best. Okay, so best finite and limited
Yes.
series is the 5 books are Daredevil, Man Without Fear by
Oh
Frank
wow,
Miller and John Romita Jr. That was an okay series.
that
I think
was
it was
that
like
was all right. Yeah,
all right.
not great,
Yeah, Death, The High Cost of Living by Gaiman
but shallow.
And Bachalo. That's okay. I mean, it's maybe maybe
Pretty.
it's the
It's
best death
pretty.
one, but
It's very pretty to look at.
yeah, pretty look at The Golden Age by Robinson and Smith.
Hmm.
Jonah Hex, the Two Gun Mojo by Joe R. Lansdale
Oh
and Tim
yeah, our
Truman.
guy Tim Truman.
Yeah, and that was good.
Yep.
The final book is Marvels by Kurt Busiek and
Whoo!
Alex
All
Ross,
right, that's a tough category that year. There you go. That's
and
that's okay.
that
Okay.
won the thing.
I
That won the
mean, going up against Marvels the year it comes out, like that's a freight train.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah.
That's tough.
What's
I
crazy
can't be mad about that.
is that best single issue was Batman Adventures Mad Love by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm,
Mm.
Marvels 2 and Sandman 50, and Batman Adventures 1.
Whoa, Sandman 50. So that's the P. Craig Russell, Neil Gaiman
Yeah,
Ramadan
yeah.
issue, which is
Ramadan, yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah,
And
and I mean, that and Marvels both lost to Batman Adventures Mad Love.
wow. Batman Adventures Mad Love. Okay, yeah, that was a Harley Quinn story, I remember. And
Yeah.
so that's interesting. And so Batman Adventures Mad Love. And then did you say also another Batman Adventures issue?
No, no, no,
Oh,
it was just the Marvels number 2.
oh, okay. So that's it. Okay.
Okay,
Huh.
so yeah, the best writer was Peter David for Hulk,
Hmm.
Enith for Hellblazer, Gaiman for Sandman, Death, High Cost of Living. He got that.
Yeah.
Alan Moore for 1963, Spawn 8, and A Small Killing. Wow, and Dave Sim for Cerebus, and for Spawn 10. Best writer artist is that. Best painter, best penciler, pencil inker.
So best penciler would have been Paul Smith's category potentially.
Yeah, and it's Chris Pachal and Mark Buckingham for Death, High Cost of Living,
Okay.
Mike Mignola and Kevin Nolan for Alien Salvation. No, absolutely not. John Williams and Al Williamson, John Romita Jr. and Al Williamson for Daredevil. No, Sandman, PK Russell, and he won that.
Wait. So that's best penciler inker like as a team or just individual also?
It says best penciler slash inker or best penciler inker team.
Oh, okay. Oh, so they combine them both. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
so if somebody happened to like Bruce Timm for Batman Adventures like Mad Love, like he must have been penciling inking himself.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Wow. So
there's Chris
no,
Sprouse and Carl Story for Legionnaires. They were good, but they were better than Golden Age.
they were not better than
Um,
Golden Age at all.
so the colorist was Joe Chiodo for Wildcats, Death and Death Blow,
Hmm.
Steve Oliff for Spawn,
Sure.
Matt Hollingsworth for Aliens, like Labyrinth, Aliens Salvation, and Future of the Black Lagoon.
Hollingsworth really is really good.
Yeah, just Joe Matt for Batman Grendel.
Oh, Joe
That's a
Matt.
really good book, though. It's a
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really good
And
book.
Joe Matt's actually a good colorist. Okay. Yeah.
There's Daniel Avozo for Sandman. Doesn't give an issue, just says Sandman, and Shade the Changeling Man. And there's Tom
Zuko?
Zuko for Hellblazer.
Oh, okay. Well, we love Tom Zuko on this show because, as you recall, he colored our favorite book, Thriller.
Yeah,
and he colored that thing on the wall behind me there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but still, Richard Ory should have been on that list, no question.
Yeah,
no question. Somewhere. Look, I don't want to say who I'd knock out, but there's a couple people on that list I would easily knock out for Richard Ory.
I would knock out a lot. In a heartbeat. Best cover artist, Brian Boland for Animal Man and Wonder Woman and DC.
Okay, Brian Boland deserves that award almost every year.
Yeah, and he won it. John Bolton for Aliens Predator. Okay, he's up. Mm-hmm. There's Glenn Fabry for Hellblazer and Vertigo Jam. Alex Ross for Marvels. Okay, Dave Sim and
Gerhard.
Gerhard for Service. They're not better than these Paul Smith. That's insane.
Yeah, not for the covers. I don't. Yeah, no, I would agree.
No. Publication design. No. All right.
Yeah, the Golden Age clearly got screwed at the Eisners.
It got snubbed.
It really got snubbed big time. Snubbed. Yeah, and I will confirm though what you said, Chris. According to Wikipedia here, Jeff Johns credits James Robinson's work on the Golden Age and Paul Smith's and Richard Ory's for igniting his love for the characters in it and for his decision to accept writing duties on JSA in 2000.
Yeah.
So there you go, folks. The Golden Age. Without the Golden Age, you may not have had Jeff Johns' ascent to the stratosphere of comic book writerdom, and he may never have taken over JSA. Sounds like he wouldn't have if not for the Golden Age. So this book, while it may not have made the biggest splash in kind of like a Watchmen Dark Knight kind of way, I think this was clearly a really influential book on probably a whole lot of people who did see the book and it, it made an impact. Just for sure. We don't always see that in the more like traditional way culturally, but it's like one of those things where there's a really incredible band that everyone is so influenced by, and then you look at their album sales and it's like they sold 5,000 copies of their first album, but meanwhile like everyone mentions them as an influence. I think a book like this, and certainly Paul Smith as an artist, I think these kind of creators, like their impact is felt far beyond what it might appear sometimes.
Well, it's interesting. I saw something on Twitter today where they were like, name something good about this comic issue, and it was like Youngblood issue 1, and what somebody said was, without this book's success, there wouldn't be like the worldwide phenomena of Walking Dead.
Yeah,
like that's true, because that's the first Image book that sold well, and it kind of launched Image, and without Image, you wouldn't have had Walking Dead.
That's true. That's true. And if someone loves The Walking Dead, that's absolutely a good argument for Youngblood 1. You could also make the argument that a lot of the quirkier and weirder Image books that are so completely far removed from like superheroes or even mainstream fiction, like there's some other Image books out there that Youngblood has opened the door for. Like, I don't know, like there's Image books these days like Headlopper, or just really comics that are way off the beaten path of mainstream superhero comics, and you wouldn't have thought back in the day that Youngblood would lead to something like that. And I think that is a cool thing about what the Image founders did, is they at least created an opportunity where Image
because if you think about it, let's just say that book failed.
Yeah. What happens then to creators' rights in comics, and what happens to people? The mainstream companies have all the power forever. And say what you will about Liefeld, McFarlane, or any of those guys, they all have big personalities, or at least, several of them have really huge personalities and they're controversial figures. So say what you will about them, but you actually need people who have big personalities and huge belief in themselves and outsized egos and belief and all that to actually make a leap like that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the people who are more like polite and affable and like friendly and are never going to ruffle any feathers, well, they're not the people who are going to gamble their future and their family's future on launching a company and going off
Right.
and doing this crazy thing. So it's like you kind of can't have it both ways. You're not going to get these visionary kind of business people taking this huge gamble and then have them also be like the friendliest, like most like easy to get along with cats. Like that just it doesn't work out.
No, I mean, I remember on Robservations, he was talking about how when they first started Image, like, how he says something about, I might have mentioned this before in the podcast, but he had mentioned that he created X-Force because he saw in his contract, I get bonus money if I create characters and those characters appear in books. And so he was like, "Oh, really?" So like Shatterstar and all those people and Domino and Cable were all created, and he when he was doing the mutants, he killed. I mean, he basically gutted that book so he could take advantage of a clause in his contract, and he just created his own ideas. And I think that Marvel was like, "Oh, well, that clause is coming out of the contracts going forward after that." Um,
Because no one had ever taken advantage of it to that degree.
Yeah, to that degree, no one had. But
Yeah.
but the thing is, but see, that just shows you again, like Liefeld's like his personality and his ability kind of like to drive things and to be to a degree that's very entrepreneurial in a way that most artists in all fields aren't.
Yep.
Like in
Oh,
movies, TV, whatever it is, most artists aren't that entrepreneurial. Those guys who are, again, like Andy Warhol, someone like that, or like a Steven Spielberg, like those
yeah, but
guys.
they're outliers. They're
Yeah, they're
huge,
outliers.
huge outliers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because you meet a lot of these. I mean, you meet most people who are artists. They've got no business sense.
Yeah, we
You
we
know,
know
like
we know these people, Chris. They're our friends. you
exactly,
know, yeah,
exactly,
yeah. We have
exactly.
many artist friends, many writer friends who have
Who've got no business sense at all, and it's
no.
not it's not a it's not a knock on you because you are focused on something else. But it's like, but a Liefeld, a McFarlane, these, what's the guy's name? Bob Richardson over at Dark Horse, like those guys are like, oh,
Mike Richardson.
Mike Richardson. They're like, oh, this is what we can do to like to facilitate art, but also kind of like push. There's money somewhere, and we can be not exploited, but we know how to like leverage.
Yeah,
There's a term in finance. It's called arbitrage, where
right,
you see a gap in something. I can make money there if I just push
right.
it and push it and push it, and that's what I mean. That's what these guys did, and that's what, there's no, yeah, you're right. Some people don't like that because to be that kind of, you have to be kind of aggressive to do that and
Yes,
and do it successfully, and which takes a little bit of a charm too to like to knock off the edge of that being too aggressive. You're not arrogant, or sometimes you are arrogant about it, but you gotta have some charm so that you're not off-putting. And it requires. I mean, that's how you get change in these commercialized art things.
it's true. You're right. You need people with big personalities every generation, whether it's Neal Adams in the 70s and he's
Right,
pushing for creators' rights and pushing for a union in comics, pushing for healthcare, pushing for Siegel and Schuster to get paid and get pensions and holding press conferences to humiliate DC over the Siegel Schuster stuff. Like that takes a big ass personality to do all that. And that's Neal Adams doing that in his generation at a time
yeah,
when he's one of the biggest artists in comics and he's taken advantage of his position to like push the medium in a good way.
right. And same thing with Liefeld. Like Liefeld at that time, like like those books, the X-Force book or something like that. I mean, like his little run at Marvel was, he said in his podcast, like he was selling like 5-6 million copies of some of those books He's like, those things they'll probably like never be broken. Those records, And I think that
Yeah.
once you break a record like or set a record like that, if you have any kind of ambition beyond just being I want to be a great artist, then you want to like you're in that sweet spot of I can do this now.
Yep.
Like if he waited 2 or 3 years and
Yeah.
this subsided after, like if they
Yeah.
launched Image 2 or 3 years later, it probably wouldn't have been the same
Yeah.
thing,
No, the window would have been gone. And like,
Yeah,
with so many things in the arts, like timing is everything. And just having the gumption and like the courage to take that leap in that moment, it's like it's everything. And like it's a huge talent, I guess, in its own way, just to have a sense of timing and to
yeah,
know like when your moments are, when to pick your moments and when to know you can like really push the envelope and kind of like break through versus when you need to hang back and just be patient and like, wait. And it's a tricky thing. Like I heard Ed Brubaker saying today, just he was interviewed on Kayfabe. I listened to a little bit of that, and he was talking about how he waited over a year for Michael Lark to be available to be the artist for he and Greg Rucka on Gotham Central, and how DC was offering them different artists to draw Gotham Central, but Ed Brubaker was like, nope, nope, nope. We need Michael Lark to draw this book because him and Rucka had such a specific vision for the book, and they knew like the ordinary artist at DC who had more of like some quote unquote DC house style, it wasn't going to work. And they needed
right.
Michael Lark. So, in that case, it was a good thing he waited a year and whatnot. But at that point, Ed Brubaker didn't have to, he wasn't in the spot that Liefeld or McFarlane were in, where they were trying to leverage a huge fan base. He was trying to wait for the right creative option, in
Yeah.
that situation. And that's the thing is like, if you're a creative person, there are times where you just have to you have to pick your spot and you have to know what the important element is that you need. And it's not always the same thing, obviously.
Well, it's interesting you say that because or that story about Michael Lark, because I can't think of any artist who draws that kind of like realism that you needed for was it Gotham Central?
Yeah.
Because I'm not drawing heroes. And everyone else is essentially known for drawing heroes, and they reached their pinnacle from drawing heroes. Like maybe like a Sean Martinborough could have done it or something like that. But I think at the time, like, he wasn't like the same guy that he is now. Or who he was like maybe even like 10 years ago. But yeah, I can't. I mean, but yeah, because he did a book. Michael Lark did a book, A Scene of the Crime. I don't remember who he
Yeah,
did
yeah,
that
that
with.
was actually with Brubaker also. I think
Yeah.
I think him and Brubaker did that originally, and then maybe Lark got busy doing something else for a while, and then Brubaker had to wait for him to follow him to Gotham
Oh, what was
Central.
that book he did? We should talk on maybe Terminal City.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. With Dean Motter, it's like that Art Deco kind of retro future book. Yeah, yeah. We should totally talk about that. That's a
Yeah.
really like a fascinating book, actually.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's like that weird kind of like it is. It's like a film noir, future film noir thing.
Yeah, and actually, that would connect to another book that I wanted us to discuss too on the show, which is prior to Terminal City. Um, Dean Motter had done Mr. X at Vortex Comics, which
Yeah,
the original arc was drawn by the Hernandez brothers,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
then Seth took over and a couple of other artists, but Dean Motter was like kind of the, I don't know, the impresario, the creator slash writer. He was kind of like the Carl Potts of Mr. X, like
Right,
kind of the way Carl Potts had his weird credit on Alien Legion. I think Dean Motter was like the creator of Mr. X, but yet he wasn't drawing it. And I think at times he wasn't writing it or drawing it, but he was the creator of it. And then Terminal City to me always kind of felt like a weird unofficial sequel to Mr. X because it
right.
was another retro future city.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, anyways,
yeah,
those are both like I think interesting and at the time somewhat high profile indie kind of comics. Like Mr. X at least was indie, but there are also books that have really been kind of lost to the sands of history. And again, you don't hear too many people talking about either one of those titles.
No, not at all. Not at all. Well, I mean, I think too many books that aren't, again, I think something about like the consolidation of comics, that the Marvel bankruptcy and this and all that sales to Heroes Reborn kind of stuff. It kind of pushed everything to be like, how do we leverage the most iconic properties that we have? Let's not do much business or put a lot of like marketing money behind stuff that is not um uh it's not going to like have the most cultural impact. I mean, it's I think that the Vertigo was such an anomaly for what it was able to do, because those books and the money and the freedom they had, it always surprised me that Marvel never did anything like that. I mean, they did with Epic, but post
Yeah.
the consolidation, the bankruptcy, the Ron Perlman selling off kind of thing, like in the 90s, the fact that they didn't revive Epic
Yeah.
as a line to do the
Yeah.
creator owned stuff was kind of like a huge creative misstep. But I feel that it might have just been like, they were like, it's all bottom line. We got to do money,
Yeah.
and we got to
It's
push.
weird. It is weird because Vertigo was so successful, but I think Vertigo, I guess, was so much the product of probably Karen Berger and then later Shelley Bond, and like just the personalities of those people running it and their tastes. And I think at Marvel, they had like their Marvel Max books and stuff, but they never really pushed into territory that was anywhere close to Vertigo, really. It was just, yeah, it was just like a different culture at Marvel. Like they weren't looking to give like a creator like Neil Gaiman like a whole new property to develop at Marvel. It just like, it felt like, I don't know, it just seemed like there wasn't like a space for that there. The way like I think Karen Berger had to carve out that space at DC, under the auspices of Jeanette Kahn giving her the ability to do that. But I think at Marvel, just something about the culture there, like you're right, it
Well,
was a
well,
missed opportunity, but they just never did it. You're
yeah.
right.
I mean, look, it's the culture. It's, I mean, like you get a sense of it in that 4-part Heroes Reborn thing that on Observations, where you get a sense of like that by Heroes people when they bought all those, like with the comic like distribution thing, and like it's like they brought on too much debt, and then to get out of that, it was like, we can't take a chance with anything. Like everything we do has to make money, and they
Yeah.
were like, okay, so what books are making us the most money? X-Men, do 5 of those. Spider-Man, do 10 of those. And pretty much everything else was kind of like knocked to the wayside, because Marvel had like a lot more. It felt like Marvel had more, like, like like Marvel 2-in-1 and What If were books that were canceled in the wake of that,
Yeah.
and Marvel
Yeah. No,
fanfare.
and you're right. There were quirkier Marvel books for sure pre-bankruptcy. Like certainly in the '80s, you would
Yeah,
have Marvel would put a fucking weird ass miniseries like Dakota North,
yeah,
private investigator slash fashion icon.
yeah,
Like
and
there were
then
like
that
weird books.
yeah, that thing with the new universe, that little thing they did that
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
but I feel like after that, and it's just like they and you hear about the way that the money and the editors were under siege when they gave like Liefeld and Lee the chance to do those books, and it was just like the office politics makes you realize that they wouldn't have been able to do anything like Vertigo, despite
Yeah.
it's obvious, like, well, we did that first with Epic.
Yeah.
And to me I was like, you have the built-in audience already. If you were to relaunch Epic and give one of these, just like, because like every great British writer or artist they pulled for Vertigo, it's like those guys could have done an Epic book
Yeah. No.
if they gave them a shot. There's no reason that like Invisibles couldn't have been Epic
No, you're
if
totally right.
they wanted
You're
to do it.
you were
But
totally right.
just there's like just no probably didn't have the financial like wherewithal. So
Hmm.
yeah. But that leads us to our last issue of Golden Age, which we'll kind of like get through, because this is mainly um it's the unveil, like it's like we mentioned, it's the unveiling. Tex Thompson has got all the superheroes coming because it's a plot, because once they know that Tex Thompson is the ultra humanite,
Yeah.
and and Dunbar was Hitler. They all go, okay, we can get at them, get close to them if we do what he wants us to come anyway to DC and unmask ourselves. Let's just go and do it. And they all go and they set up their plan, and they meet at the Capitol, and that woman who was having sex with Tex Thompson, she kind of breaks protocol and just lets everybody know what the hell is going on. Like, oh my God, like here's the thing. And she gets like her head knocked off by the robot man because you see his hands like roll out in this big splash of blood, and they never show her body. They never show the what happened to her. And then the rest of the book goes, and what was they is told that the brain power of Hitler is in Dunbar. It's all out battle for the rest of the book.
Yep.
It's a pretty cool battle. It's just really like they're all getting their asses beat because he's supposedly he can't be beat. His only thing is he's invulnerable unless he's tired, but he'll never get tired because he has super endurance. And so it's like he's pretty much like not able to be defeated. And everyone's fighting, like Tigress is fighting Robot Man. And then the whole thing with Captain Triumph, like that guy, he's there to try to save the woman he loves, and he won't touch the birthmark. So Captain Triumph never gets to come to life. And then the guy with Johnny Thunder, because he's kind of like a laughing stock when he realizes he's been duped by Hitler and everything like that. He sends the lightning bolt to fight Iron Man, and the lightning bolt's like, no. I know what's real, and you're fucking up, and he loses the lightning bolt. Lightning bolt says, "I'm out, peace," and it's just fight. The Atom is fighting him, and and Dunbar cannot be beat by anybody. He just seems unbeatable. And then Paul Kirk shows up as dressed in the Manhunter uniform to beat up Tex Thompson. They have a really cool fight. The sad fight, the cool fight is the guy who wants to be Captain Triumph. He wants to show off in front of the woman he loves that he can fight this robot man without being Captain Triumph, and he gets killed.
Very, very sad.
It's a sad moment. It's a real sad moment. He and Johnny Quick is trying to fight the guy. He can't, defeat him. And Alan Scott goes. He gets the Green Lantern ring. He shows up. This scene where the guy like jumps into Robot Man, like and they're in that water, and he gets electrocuted. It's really kind of a shocking moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you just wonder what happened to the guy who's like the ghost. Like what happens to the ghost? Is he stays as ghost. There's Alan Scott. That fight. Like those 4 panels or those 3 panels where Alan Scott is fighting Dunbar. There's 3 quick panels, but then when he like knocks his teeth out,
right,
it's like he's tired at that point because he's been hurt like that.
Yeah.
But that one page where Scott and him are fighting, and he's like, his mouth is all broken, and it's like the Hitler guy. It's just, that's like pretty. That's some great cartooning where he does that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's the thing with then he defeats there's Manhunter defeats Tex Thompson, he kills him, but there's that part where what's his name, where Dunbar hits Alan Scott with a tree, and that's it for him.
Oh yeah,
he's done.
That's right. You were talking about the wood.
Yeah, he's done. He's basically out of the fight because he's been like, he's hit with a tree like he has no powers.
Yeah.
And then what's really cool is that I love this moment where Starman shows up, and the cosmic rod gets broken, and then and Dunbar thinks he's got everyone beat because he actually does have everybody beat.
Yeah, I love how the cosmic rod gets broken by like Tex throwing a wheel, like, or a tire off of a
Yeah,
truck, off of a bus. He threw
yeah,
like Starman's doing like some heavy superhero shit, prepare for cosmic retribution, and he's holding the staff, and Tex just breaks it with with like a tire.
yeah. It's awesome. It's an
Yeah.
awesome kind of fight. I mean, and then right when that new guy who never gets a name and he's just yeah, I don't know, he's got some sort of superpower. Right when he gets kicked in the nuts, with a super kick and obviously out of it, uh, that's when Liberty Bell stabs Dunbar through the chest with the pieces of the cosmic rod,
Yeah.
and that's it.
That's
That's
great.
the end of Hitler and the whole fight, the whole kind of mystery men thing, and then we jump ahead another 5 years, 6 years, and Johnny Quick is back he's I guess they're out in California. They're in Los
Yeah.
Angeles with
He's got
Liberty
a
Bell.
he's got a nice house. Looks like maybe a nice little place in Burbank with a pool.
Someplace like that, yeah, and pool in the back, and he's up here. He's a writer. He's obviously doing like his documentaries, and just the way this kind of like these last few pages of like trying to like
Mhm.
just to recap it all is a really fun,
Yeah.
not fun, but it's like a really smart way to wrap this up, and it goes
Yeah,
back to
it
Johnny
is.
Quick, like giving us the it's like he's doing a documentary again, What I
Yeah.
love is this little page where the guy who played Johnny Thunder, he's like being a dick to some woman at some Christmas thing
Yes.
because he
Yeah.
doesn't have the damn Thunderbolt anymore, and he's like
Yeah.
now probably like the most morose person there was.
Yep.
Um, and then the final page is the introduction of the Silver Age characters.
Yeah, and that's
Mm.
like that's a nice little kind of way that everything sort of wraps up here with this story of the Golden Age is the full page shot, beautiful Paul Smith shot of all these classic Silver Age DC Comics heroes. And you got Captain Comet and the Challengers of the Unknown, the Doom Patrol, Adam Strange, and the Flash, Aquaman, Silver Age Green Lantern, Silver Age Atom. And over that, you hear Johnny Quick's final voiceover, and he says, "Other heroes are coming forth, leaping into the headlines with an almost monotonous regularity. Young heroes, young faces, young powers. And it's their turn, their time. For them, a new age, as fresh and clear and bright as sterling silver."
Yeah, that's a
And
great.
boom, yeah, we're out. That's the Silver
We're
Age.
out. I,
I
I
mean,
mean, the thing about um Johnny Quick's voiceover throughout the whole series
mhm,
is there's kind of like a lyricism to it that Paul Smith give. I mean shit, James Robinson gives that character,
yeah,
which kind of feels like it's kind of like his voice and his reverence for these heroes, these characters, and stuff like that. And it's a really I kind of love the way he just you like you can feel how much he loves this time period and these characters by the way that he talks about them in like that sense of like loss and the yearning that the Johnny Quick character has for their times of triumph and now this little coda at the end. I mean, that to me is like it's kind of a shame that he didn't get the nomination that year.
yeah.
It's
I
just kind
mean,
of, I mean, it's kind of a shame because it's
it
so good.
is. And maybe if he did, maybe he would have gone on to write the Silver Age as like his next his follow-up. It seems almost like it's perfectly set up for the sequel here,
Yeah, it totally is.
you know?
But I think that there was they stopped doing Elseworlds for a minute.
Mhm.
I think the next thing they did, which I kind of like this series too, they did remember this little series one summer called
Oh yeah,
Tangent
like the
Comics?
Tangent universe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wait, no,
Yeah,
there was Tangent and there was also the Amalgam universe.
right. There's both. They did
Was
both.
were those two separate initiatives? I'm trying to remember.
Wait,
Because like
okay.
Amalgam, yeah, I don't I 'cause that was like the two companies crossing over characters and
No, no,
whatnot.
Okay, yes. So Tangent was the DC thing that was like Elseworlds, but that because I remember there was that one Tangent Green Lantern that James Robinson did with J.H. Williams, and the amalgam was they did something with Marvel because I
Oh,
remember there
yeah,
was
yeah,
like
yeah. Because I remember actually there was an amalgam book that was drawn by Paul Smith, and Paul Smith drew an amalgam. It was Iron Lantern, and it was
yeah
Iron Man meets Green Lantern, and it was like a
yeah
one, one issue, whatever. But
yeah. I mean,
that's
the book I
interesting.
remember the most in that was I don't know who was the writer, but Kerry Nord did a book called Bruce Wayne, Agent of Shield, and
Oh,
I
okay.
thought, and I thought, oh, that would have been a cool just ongoing series.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That would have been really cool.
No, I could totally see
Um,
that. And
but
well, I'm sorry. One other thing I just want to call out. Just looking at this very last page here, I just noticed as we were talking. Did you see who the character is in the very top right? Who you can't quite see. You can't see his face, but you can clearly see his body right above Adam Strange. There, um, it's the Creeper.
oh yeah, it is.
Steve Ditko's The Creeper, you just see his chest and a little bit of
Yeah.
his tights and a little bit of like his creeper hair, but he's clearly yellow skinned, the creeper. And then on the other corner, also not quite
Oh
pictured,
man.
Animal Man. Yeah, Animal
Yeah.
Man on the other side. So it's kind of funny. Some nice little Easter eggs here on this last page.
Yeah, it's
Um,
great. It's got John
yeah,
Jones
yeah.
as the detective with the Manhunter,
Oh yeah,
Martian Man,
that's his
the
detective
Martian Manhunter.
version
Is like the
underneath him. Yes.
yeah, is the guy some
That's a
Doom
great
Patrol.
that's a great
Yeah,
Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter looks awesome.
yeah, I know. It's pretty awesome. Supposedly, like a really cool Martian Manhunter appearance in this month's or the latest issue of the Human Target this month.
Oh, cool. I got to catch up on that.
Yeah, I want to get that too.
Yeah.
So everyone, that is the golden age. Paul Smith, James Robinson, Richard Ory, and John Costanza. I mean, it's this final page, this final book is cool. I mean, the final issue is cool because it's a gold cover.
Yeah.
It follows the same kind of design, but it's a gold cover with like gold leaf they used to do on stuff
Yeah.
back then. It's I don't know. I still love this book. I don't know how many times I've read it. Probably like 5 or 6 times. Like in the last 20 years.
I can see
Uh,
why you
ju-
love it, man. I can see why you love it. I'm going to go back and read this again myself in the future because it was a lot better than I remembered. I think I just genuinely didn't appreciate this book as a kid when it came out. And looking at it now, I'm really glad that we did take a look at this because it's a really worthwhile book. And god damn, is it beautiful. Just
it's
gorgeous.
beautiful. The storytelling's amazing. The characterizations are cool. I mean, it kind of feels because it's so much like where they're not in their hero uniforms,
Mhm.
it feels like a pulp book of that era.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
right. It does. Like it feels like a Doc Savage
Like a
or
Doc Savage
yep,
or like a Shadow or something
yep.
like that, or the Spider. You know what? He would have been cool doing a Doc Savage.
Oh, totally. Paul Smith? Oh, yeah, he'd be
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, I'd be surprised if he hadn't done something like that because his style is so perfectly suited to that kind of a character. I mean, it's so perfectly suited to this book, like just really clearly in his pocket. Like, yeah, it's amazing. Really, really amazing. Um, yeah, I wouldn't mind looking at more Paul Smith stuff too, like some of the off the beaten path Paul Smith. Like if we ever do like a look at just some of his like Doctor Strange or some of his other books that he's well known for aside from X Men.
His Doctor Strange run is one of the best
It's
Doctor
gorgeous, right?
Strange runs.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
one of the
man.
best Doctor
Like
Strange
every
runs.
time Paul Smith drew anybody, it's just like every time it's like those became iconic versions of those characters.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. I remember I told you I have that book that I have the little art book of people.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure that he did a Alan Scott for me
Oh,
in that little
cool.
little pinup sketch. Um, no, he did a Doctor Strange. Who did that Alan Scott? Maybe he did Alan Scott later on. Because I used to have I remember I had somebody draw. Yeah, it was Alan Scott. It was Paul Smith. I had someone draw me art because I didn't have my sketchbook one time down there, and I had them draw on like the backing boards, Had like 5 or 6 of those. Oh, can you sketch on this? Can you sketch on this?
Yeah.
And he drew like an Alan Scott for me, but I don't know where that is, and it might just be lost at this point.
Hope not.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'd love to see. I mean, that X-Men run he did, the Strange run, obviously his Nexus stuff. I can't think of much else he did after this. I know he did Leave It a Chance, but I don't know why he's not working a lot now.
I don't know either. There's guys like him, and also like Michael Golden, like guys from that era who are just some of the all-time greats, and they haven't put out as much work as I would like, but honestly, like the more that you work in kind of being a freelance person in the creative world, like I get it. It's like it's hard to fucking balance your life with these massive projects sometimes, and now I'm just more like appreciative for the work that we have gotten from these all-time world-class talents, people like your Paul Smiths, your Michael Goldens. Like I'm just appreciative now for the work we have gotten. But yeah, there's some more great work from a lot of cats like that I'm looking forward to us talking about.
Yeah, Michael Golden. Jesus Christ. What's the book we want to talk about? The Nom?
Oh yeah, dude, we got to talk about the Nom for sure. We should totally talk about the Nom, because that is just some of the most extraordinary work ever published by Marvel Comics. Like Golden's work on that is just like out of this world.
That's Marvel in the 80s when they had money.
Or
they had freedom, whatever it is.
Amazing. We will definitely talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Comics Rot Your Brain. You can look at the show notes for some art that we talked about, some of the pages in this. Try to do some links to some other Paul Smith stuff in case you're too lazy to look him up on Google.
Yes, absolutely. And hey, everybody out there, if you've got ideas for books that Chris and I should be talking about from the 80s or any other era, please feel free to drop us an email. We may or may not agree with you, but we'd love to hear what y'all think we should talk about.
And there'll be an email, although we're not telling you what it is now because we haven't set it up yet, but it'll be in the show notes, so check the show notes. Or check the website, which will be linked in the show notes, and we will definitely, we definitely look at all the reader mail.
Absolutely.
Mail.
And the website will be up sooner rather than later. By the time you hear this, it'll be up. Comics Rot Your Brain. comicsrotyourbrain.com.
Yep. All right, everyone. Good night.
All right. Thanks.